Hey everybody, folks. This is a bit different. I wanted to do this as a live. Man, I have not done any videos at all for 2 weeks. And I'm doing this one on, of course, Eric and Kirk's speech, and of course the general. You know, it's so much to touch upon, honestly, with the speech in the last 2 weeks. So much has happened, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not somebody who wants to capitalize on any of this, but I think that there are some things here worth discussing and worth pointing out. If nothing more than just to move forward and to find healing. And I'll be honest with you, the reason why I haven't posted or recorded or done anything in 2 weeks is because I haven't known what to do. I've had to gather my thoughts. I the last thing I had posted. On the live was supposed to be my regular office hours, but ended up being 30 minutes. I got 30 minutes before I went live. I got the news that Charlie Kirk had been shot. And then I learned during the live stream that I was doing that he had passed. So that live stream then became not about philosophy office hours. It became about that very same thing. And so I had to make a choice at that time. You had already had the thumbnail. So as you go back and look at that one, it's just going to have your regular thumbnail. I changed the title to be something about Charlie Kirk and Irina Zarutska, the woman in Charlotte who was stabbed on the train, about the violence in our country and our society right now. And so really it was that. And um, so that was the last thing I posted. And I had to make a choice at the time. Am I going to just soldier on and do my regular thing, or am I going to address this? And like I said in that video, I don't normally comment upon political stuff, but this I think things it exceeds that. So, um, man, I'll be honest with you, and I shared a post about this as well. Many of you read it. It really wrecked me. It really did. Uh, it really affected me in ways that I had not predicted. Seeing Charlie Kirk assassinated, seeing the fallout, feeling the fallout of that. Um, I did not expect to feel the way that I felt, and I don't know if this resonates with any of you guys. So this is why I'm doing this, is because I think that it's worth talking about. Um, we could talk about Erica's her speech where she forgave the killer. I'm using that as sort of the what should we call it, um, the foil for this conversation. You have to bear with me as well, because man, I've taught 3 classes today, back to back to back. My back is acting up, by the way. Speaking of back, and so but I wanted to get back in the action, and maybe tomorrow I'll do another office hours call in. But yeah, so we're here now, and this one is going to be this one that you're in right now. This is going to be a call in as well, because I think that there are other people in here going through the same thing, similar thing, not knowing how to process what is going on. There's a lot of interrelated issues here too, philosophically speaking, like what is the good? Real stark contrast between good and evil. Issues about free speech, issues about the goods of society. Even if you're not, let's say, all that politically active, you can still have deeply held views about what is good for society, or communal or societal or social issues. Um, so, and then response, how do we respond to violence? And then, of course, now, excuse me, what does it mean to forgive someone? And yeah, so all these things just kind of, there's a litany of issues here that we could discuss. So the line is open, and like normal with my call-in shows, it's been a couple of weeks since I've done one, but like normal, the link to call in is at the top of the chat. And so feel free to click that link at any time, and it'll take you right to my StreamYard studio, and then you just kind of jump on. You don't have to sign up or enroll in anything. But yeah, there's um honestly, I'll be honest with you as well. I've been so invested in this case. Um I did not expect to be invested in the way that I have been, like I said, but I watched the entire 30-minute plus when they caught the guy, which that's one thing, by the way, that I'm really delighted to see is that it's becoming, many times it's about the shooter, right? Especially in like school shootings or something. It's about the shooter. Let's hear more about that. What's their motivation? This guy's gotten buried. Like there's nothing in the news about this guy anymore. Like people don't care because what he did was unimportant. One of Charlie's friends, very close friends, I don't remember if it was Tyler or whether it was Andrew Colvat or Tyler Boyer. He shared a quote from Kierkegaard. He said that once the tyrant or the assassin in this case does his job, fulfills his role, then his job is done. But once the martyr fulfills his job has just begun. And that's exactly what you see here. So I'm really delighted and relieved to see that he's kind of left the spotlight. Yeah, like I said, I sat there and I watched the whole 30-minute press conference of when they caught the guy, everything they knew about him, everything they said about him. Not the first false guy they caught or the second false guy they caught, but when they actually caught the guy, they now have in custody. About a day and a half later, watch that entire 30-minute presser live. Was edge of my seat, and then the whole arraignment hearing or whatever you call it, the first hearing where he's in, WebEx through with the jail with the bulletproof vest. Many of you may have just seen highlights of it or clips of it, but I sat there and watched like the whole, I think it was a 20-30 minute hearing there. And then to cap that all off, man, we got home on Sunday from church, and we flipped on the memorial service. I did not expect it to be over 5 hours long, almost 5.5 hours long, um, from start to finish, speaker to speaker. But I watched the entire thing for front to back. I watched every single speaker, every single worship service, man, and it was absolutely overwhelming and really transformative. So, like I said, I've been really invested in this, and I think I can think of a couple reasons why. So let me just work through some of these thoughts with you, and let me see what you guys think. So I think that yeah. So I appreciate you saying that, Jake. It did look like a political rally, and that's kind of what worried me a little bit because I was like, upon looking back at it, I was thinking, well, I hope this is not the new RNC. I hope that the turning point doesn't become the Republican National Convention. That worried me a little bit, especially upon seeing the new speaker slate for continuing the tour, um, Charlie's fall tour of campuses. That kind of bothered me because I saw like Vivek Ramaswamy. I saw Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles is awesome. He's like a national treasure, so I have no problem with him. But like, see, I don't think Ann Coulter. There's some other people. Erica Kirk's on there. Anyway, there's images floating around and schedules floating around about who the speakers are going to be, and all these big names, and it's like RNC people. It's like people you would expect to see speak, and I have a little bit of worry about the direction of that, but you got to trust what these people are doing with their own organization. Um, so there's that. But let me get back to like what I think made it affect me so much was because I do much of the similar work that Charlie does, and there's obviously no comparison in the sense like he's a celebrity. I'm not. His reach is far more than mine, um, and we do different things in our actual jobs. But what I mean, it's similar in the respect that we both care about free speech. We both care about exchange of ideas with people whom we disagree with vehemently, and the open exchange of those ideas. And we care about young people and changing hearts and minds of young people. So I think that's what really wrecked me so much. And it's not because I'm scared of it happening to me. So the fear is not a thing. Uh, and that's not what's kind of, because I'll be honest, not putting on video, I canceled class last week, took a mental health day, one of my days last week, and I've been sort of like shocked and shell shocked about this and kind of just like idle. It's not out of fear. That's not what's kept me frozen. I think it's an overwhelming presence of evil and real visceral feeling of evil that's very powerful, very overwhelming, and it's like, what do I do with that? And also the feeling that you know I try to do. I have small dreams. I have small dreams like Charlie's big dreams. To change hearts and minds as well. And it's almost like okay, I can keep doing what I'm doing. I can go to work the next day and do another video, but like what for? Not that I'm afraid, but like what for? Because we have been dealt such a blow. It's that feeling. I think that it's hard to articulate that unless you felt it. But yeah, but I think that having this platform here, whether it be for me in the classroom, or whether it be on video here, as we do on office hours, people calling in, um, I think that it's vitally important. I've tried to embody not the spirit of Charlie Kirk because it's not just his spirit, but we can call it the spirit of Charlie Kirk if you like. But that spirit of open dialogue and listening to the other side, I hope that I've I have a good track record of showing that I embody that. And so anybody who disagrees and so on, I think he's better at dealing with the trolls and hecklers than I am. Um, but fortunately, on my show, my call-in show, I've not had people do that. Um, not like actively like insult me or something. But yeah, express vibrant disagreement. Let's call it vibrant disagreement because I think that disagreement's really good. And yeah, and I also try to embody that in my classrooms. Of course, I still have to teach the classroom. I'm still the guy in charge, the guy on the registrar's, grade that they get for their class and so on. And so I'm the official expert in the room. However, I still think that I still try to evoke and protect this atmosphere of open engagement and dialogue that people can come and ask questions, not just clarification questions, but hey, I'm having trouble with this view. I think actually this, um, and then be able to do that in a spirit of openness. Um, Now, I will say this: I don't think I've mentioned this on video yet. Let me talk about it now because I spoke about the Charlie Kirk assassination in class the very next day. And I usually don't talk about current events, let alone political events. Um, but I felt, again, because of the work that I do, um, encouraging open dialogue and that freedom of speech and exchange of ideas, I felt that it was important to address, and also a couple of other reasons because Charlie Kirk does work on university campuses. He actually, at the university I teach at, he has a chapter there. So many people look up to him and respect him and know of him and so on. And of course, by this time, the next day after assassination, this was on Thursday, it was plastered all over social media. And so I addressed it in all three of my classes. I teach three classes every Tuesday, Thursday. I addressed it, and I actually had a student, believe it or not, had the guts to say that he got what was coming to him. And normally, this is the only time that I do this. Normally, he got what was coming to him. Normally, I would entertain that. But I shut it down immediately. I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That has no place at all in this discussion. It has no place in dialogue and open dialogue. Because what else could that mean other than he got what was coming to him? He deserved it. He deserved to be killed, so on and so forth. Like violence is justifiable. I don't know what else, what other plausible charitable interpretation you could give to that. He got what was coming to him. He got his. Like there's no other, there's no charitable interpretation of that. So I immediately nipped it in the bud. I said, absolutely not, not in my classroom. But at the end of the day, this is a student of mine. Um, she's a very bright student, very bright. Speaks up in class, has very wonderful things to say, which was why it was so shocking as well, because I did not expect it from this student. You know, we've already been in classes for about a month already, got to know them. I did not expect it from her. And so it wasn't like she was saying it aggressively or mean or anything like that, but she was already, and this bothered me too, she was already parroting the views of social media, because this is exactly what people were saying. It's like, oh, well, he had certain views on gun control, so he deserved it. Um, Now, in a moment, guys, for those of you who are here and listening, I'll continue my conversation, but I expect to have on a friend of mine. He's actually a former student of mine, who is currently on his commute home. And I texted him before going live, texted him about an hour ago or so. And I texted him because he was actually at this event. He was at the memorial in Arizona and at Charlie Kirk's memorial. So I expect to have him on, and we'll talk through like how he experienced things, what he felt during that as well. Um, yeah, but again, if you want to call in, the link is at the top of the chat box, and it looks like we have a guest here. So I'm going to bring you on, Nate, and just again want to encourage you when you come on to have your camera on. I think it encourages that openness, and like we have nothing to hide. I mean, if you keep it off, you're still like free dialogue, free speech. You're free to do that as well. But just in terms of like open and sharing and stuff, yeah. So we'll do that. We'll bring Nate on here, and then we'll Nate. Good to
Hey,
hear
what's
from you.
up?
Good to see you again. How
Camera,
are you?
good.
I
Camera or
can.
no camera? I don't have a shirt on, bro.
It's all right, dude. I love it. I love the tattoo.
All
That's
right.
cool.
Yeah. Um, yeah, how's it going, man?
It's going well. I imagine we spoke before, so I imagine you have different views on this, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so I missed the brief intro, but I'll
Yeah.
bring this up. Obviously I want to generalize just because obviously, Erica Kirk is not only taking over a really grave CEO
Yeah.
role, a very large organization, but
Yeah.
the human element and stuff. But yeah, I told the story. I went to Catholic school, and so I told the story that Dante told on Pearl's show yesterday.
Mhm.
Um, and so the caricature I think that a lot of religious people have of evil or sin or things that are wrong in a social context, and what sort of opinion applies, what a belief is about, this kind of stuff. Francesca de Rimini was Dante's, sort of Jezebel in
Mhm.
Dante's Inferno. And people would judge her for running away with some dude's brother, with
Mhm.
Paolo Malatesta, after being forced to marry Giancato Malatesta. And so, it's one of those things where it's like, if I know that there's no hate like Christian hate, and what Christian forgiveness ends up being is that I'm justified to shoot the guy that stops this car in the middle of the road. I get to lash out and hit my wife. You know, um, you know, any of my subjective beliefs, or my words don't matter. I really I really think that we should believe in the institution of justice,
Yeah.
and I really think that that is a great starting point. It's probably one of many starting points. Even with concepts like absolute forgiveness.
Mhm. Are you worried that by her forgiving the shooter that this kind of precludes justice, sort of overlooks his guilt or his offense or something like that?
Well, no. So, okay. So I think your question, so to be completely blunt, is a little far off from reality. So my friend Alex got shot in Aurora, Colorado. He died in the
Mm.
movie theater shooting.
Oh gosh, sorry.
But this is well, okay. So this is how Alex actually died. Guy comes in a movie theater with assault weapons, tactical grenades, bulletproof vest, and
Yeah,
all the stuff. Really horrible, right?
yeah,
But Alex dives on his girlfriend, and the guy shoots him in the back 4 or 5 times. And then that actually didn't kill Alex, but the guy, while he was in the path of shooting him in the back 4 to 5 times, then the guy turned and he was still looking at him. He didn't get him good enough, and then he shot him in the back of the head. And so, he died with his brains on his girlfriend, saving his
oh
girlfriend's
gosh,
life. But yeah, so
oh my
so
gosh,
and this was this guy that had this planning and went into this movie theater.
yes,
He was a neuroscience student. I think
yeah,
hopefully people can sort of recognize and appreciate that. And so he was a smart guy, but uh, when I think of forgiveness and compassion and understanding, and saying that, like, look, there is maybe some sort of punitive, retributive sort of aspect of justice that the
yeah,
community is going to hear. That's just
for
going to be
sure,
the
yeah,
reality of it. But saying, so I think when we think of people that um, maybe sound rational, if they sound rational 99% of the time, and then there's 1% where, this guy takes his grandpa's 30-06 and, puts a
yeah,
hole in Charlie's neck, and Charlie's neck is killing his neck. Like, that's the
yeah.
thing that's doing it, as it turned out. You know, like, I don't think Erica's forgiveness of this guy has anything to do with, it doesn't have everything to do with what restorative justice is like,
Oh,
because
for sure, yeah.
you know,
So let me just kind of map out some things here. So um, there is the punishment, and there's the guilt, and then there's forgiveness that kind of treats of these things. And um, so when it comes to punishment, there's still going to be punishment, legal punishment, social punishment, and so on and so on, that the state carries out. Uh, and so when a person forgives, though, a person can only forgive things that have been done to them. Like, I can't forgive the shooter, like, for doing. I mean, because it's not an offense towards me. I mean, only very, very indirectly, very tangentially, I can say, "Oh, okay, I forgive him." Like, I can, but like not in a way that Erica can. So, so she has that power to forgive because it was an offense directly towards her. And so what did that mean? Well, this means that the
but she
guilt
didn't do it in
on
court. Derek,
him.
sorry, Dr.
Yeah,
McAllister.
yeah, of course.
I just want to mention from my perspective, she didn't. She did this at the memorial service, which was brave because 7.4 million
Yeah,
people saw it. But
yeah.
she didn't. She hasn't had her day in court, if she's going to, and how that's going to work, either. So that's also, like, you know, um, I get the sort of philosophical point that, I think you did a better job putting a pin in sort of the gravity and importance of, like, how acute it is for a victim to forgive the person that
Yeah.
perpetrated a crime.
Yeah, absolutely. But she can only forgive a very small, although it's a very great offense, small aspect of it. So it's not total and utter forgiveness. She can't remove the state's punishment with her forgiveness. She can only forgive what has been offended of her. And so, with only respect, like bracketing that all the other stuff away,
Right,
only
right,
with respect to
right.
that, that's what she's forgiven. Like,
Yeah,
and she wasn't
yeah,
going to carry out personal punishment anyway. So that was off the table anyway. So it was just with respect to the guilt. In my eyes, am I going to hold this offense against you? And she said no, with only
yeah.
with respect to the offense towards her.
And so what's your, if we're talking about theology, Christianity, philosophy, what's your,
Mhm.
what's your interpretation? If you know that I study political thought or political theory,
Hmm.
and Charlie Kirk gets murdered or something, do you have some sort of what would you tell me when I'm talking about, like, well, you're not fixing evolutionary crazy, and you're also not satisfying what everyone is, like, you can never just make everyone happy, kind of deal.
Yeah. Um, what do you mean? Could you be more specific about what it is you're trying to put a finger on?
Um, yeah, yeah. So, like, okay, so the guy with the red hair that killed my friend Alex was a lot
Yeah.
like Jared Loeffner in Tucson. So I'm in Arizona. But
Yeah.
yeah, Jared Loeffner, he wrote that the government was using, grammar to control people. And this was after he had gotten kicked out of the
Mm.
army in the first place. And so, you know, this guy was maybe someone that shot guns. He was already predisposed to kind of shoot things in the first place. He was not maybe saying no to violence in the first place. And so,
Hmm.
I think from my perspective, the sensitivity of the human brain is just that, the 1% that goes 10% off can lead people to doing really crazy stuff. That's the sort of reality of it. But yeah, I've heard people talking about instant death for this guy and God's judgment, and
Yeah.
reinforcing their belief that we are God's harbingers of pain and of death a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that I view those as separate. I think that it's a separate issue. These two things. One is um, finding our identity religiously speaking as a society, whether we want to continue down the path of just secularism and no religion at all, or whether society, I don't mean statewide, like in the separation of church and state. I don't mean as a state, but I mean societally, culturally, whether we want to, much like after 9/11, much like after many great tragedies that people band together. We've seen that now. So is that a direction that we're going to continue to head? That's a separate question from this guy. I mean, because what Erica did was theological and
Yeah.
could spark a cultural change. And I think it will, in some portion, have that effect. But again, it's just going to plant a seed. Even in her own speech, she says, I'm planting seeds. This is planting seeds. You still have to like choose to do this and continue down this if you want to do this. So I see that as completely separate from
So
calling
you're
for
talking
now,
about
say like a
are you
public
t- are
execution or
you're
like
talking about turning are you talking about Turning Point now, or what do you
I think
like?
turning point is just one aspect of it. I'm
Yeah.
referring to just it's almost like another new great awakening. Like we see this in our histories, United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just another great awakening. And I think we've had three or four already throughout the 18 and 1900s, and so this could be the next one with respect to like social culturally. Now, did that change the Constitution because they had great awakenings? No. So I'm not calling for like a state change, but that's what I'm referring to. And then I see that, like I said, a separate, complete separate issue as to like calling for justice and like a crackdown of this. So how would you strongly not only retributively exact justice, but also strongly deter this from happening again? And that's why people, as you can understand, see are calling for like a public execution, calling for like if people see this and are afraid of this happening to them, then they would be less likely to do it. That's the
Yeah.
argument that they
So
make.
so I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a physicist, I'm not that great of a philosopher, anything like that. Just being completely honest. But if I had to offer like a prescriptive or descriptive sort of solution to stuff like this, like a 30-06, that round slaps, right? Most
Hmm.
people know what
Hmm.
that means. It really does slap. And so, I would say that, if we're gonna stop, more good people like Charlie Kirk from being assassinated. That's what this was a political assassination.
Yeah.
I'm in my opinion, I would say that, um, it's not only about sort of overlapping the social and political dialogue, but it's like you guys can't have rounds that slap and then you expect that no one gets shot by them, right? A 30-06 isn't like a deer round, right? Like a 30-06 is something the military has used in the past and stuff like this. And so,
Yeah.
I'm very anti 2A, and I very much think
Yeah.
that it is an insane line to imagine a world where we ask, 17 and 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds to sign up for ROTC.
Yeah.
And we tell them that it is okay to have this penchant for violence. And then where you go is you go on social media, and it's guys like, Garen Thumb, and it's these lunatic influencers that tell people to
Yeah.
narcissistically own weapons. It's like, this is not only not what Christ said, but this is what makes people say Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, we may not agree on this. I don't know how I feel about Second Amendment. I've I've never owned a gun. My father has. I've shot them in the past, but not big ones, not a 38-06. So, um, yeah, I mean, so we may not agree on that, but I noticed something in saying this. You said they say you say narcissistically own guns. I think that's a clue into, like, because if you can also responsibly own guns. That's, I think, what we want. Gun ownership, it should be like responsible. It should be not narcissistic. It shouldn't have with mental illness. And I think anybody who even is against the Second Amendment in principle, I think would at very least want, like, if we're going to own guns, have it like mental health checks and so on and
Yeah.
so on. I
I
think
mean,
everybody can get on board with
I mean,
that.
it's crazy. It's crazy to think to me that $100 can buy your family groceries for a week, but $100 can also um, $100 can buy anyone's family's groceries for a week. Some people groceries for several months. Some places in the world, and $100 can also buy you a very very
Hmm.
cheapo 40 millimeter or something.
Yeah.
And that's partially just the way the world is. It's partially just the way that the
Mhm.
world is. So
Yeah. Well, man, so we're gonna bring in some other guests on here, but man, I really appreciate you coming on, being the first to break the ice. And
yeah,
I always enjoy talking to you. I enjoy talking to you a lot more than I enjoy your your uh your written stuff.
yeah,
Because if I reply, I want you to reply back. I think that you drop it and then kind of run. So I try to
yeah,
reply
yeah,
to
yeah.
as many comments as I can. So I've just noticed that. But just a
Oh,
heads up about
yeah,
that, not a big deal. So anyway,
yeah.
man, good to see you again, Nate, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you. Yeah, I
All right,
appreciate you. Take care.
of course. Take care. Bye bye. All right, so guys, we're gonna bring on our new guest here. I'm gonna answer a question or two here. Um, Somebody says here, Erica can't forgive either. Charlie was the victim. Um, Excuse me. It's this bubbly. It's this bubbly, you guys. I'm not used to drinking it. My wife drinks them all the time. She got some and then just left. She's out of town now, but excuse me. So, yeah, so Erica can forgive the offense done to her. She can't forgive the offense done to Charlie. Um, Only Charlie can forgive that offense, and now that he's gone, he can't in this life forgive that offense. But Erica can forgive the offense done to her. Her children can forgive the offense done to them. Charlie's friends can forgive the offense done to them. But for Erica, her forgiveness was especially poignant because she was his wife and now a widow. And this is interesting as well. Maybe we can talk about this with a few other people here. Forgiveness is meaningless if it doesn't entail exculpation from guilt or fault. So in the Catholic view and in the virtue ethics view, there's a couple of different things with the offense. There's both the guilt and then the punishment. In Latin, it's called the poena, the punishment, and then the guilt is called the culpa, like a mea culpa. And so you can excuse the guilt, mea culpa, but you cannot excuse the punishment unless, let's say in Erica's case, she can't excuse the punishment of capital punishment because that's not hers to carry out. Whatever punishment she was going to carry out, she can not do that. Like if she was going to exact retribution personally, she could forego that. Like an eye for an eye sort of thing. Like if we're thinking like medieval warfare or something, or like your village gets attacked and it's going to go back and get this other guy, right? Thinking like a Braveheart situation or something. You can forego doing that and say, okay, this punishment that I had in mind, I'm not going to do that anymore. But usually nowadays, unless you're going to go off the rails and vigilante and try to exact your own punishment, usually the punishment is not yours to carry out. It's just the guilt, and only in your own eyes. Like Erica, for herself, with her the offense done to her, is saying when she says "I forgive you," she's saying that offense done to me personally, I don't see it anymore. And that's a it's a bold statement of Christ's love, because she is saying now I love this person, and that has more weight for me than whatever guilt that I had in my mind on this person. And that's why it's so astounding. All right, we're going to bring in new alt side, uh, bring on you here, and I don't know if you have camera or not. You didn't have camera last time, but let's hear what you have to say. What do you think about all this?
Hi. Yeah, I'm back.
Hey, hey, yeah, glad to have you
Um,
back.
yeah, I'm glad to be back. Honestly, I've been looking forward to this since our last conversation
Oh,
because it
good,
was
yeah,
just that pleasant. Hopefully
yeah,
I'm coming in all right.
yeah.
I
You
think I
are.
have a little
Well,
background noise.
yeah. No, I don't hear it anyway. Maybe other people do. We've got two other people in line, so we will give you about 20 minutes, let's say, and that just lets other people know as well how long they'd have to wait if they're going to wait. So, but yeah,
Okay.
how do you think about all this?
Um, well, in regards to Charlie Kirk, um,
Yeah.
I I didn't like the guy's rhetoric. I
Hmm.
found him rather exploitative of
Hmm.
people. Um, so I find it hard to not criticize the guy, and I don't think death eludes you from critique, you know?
Of course. I mean, they
However,
say
it's in
it's
poor taste to
illness.
do so, isn't it? The guy was murdered
Yeah.
live on stage. People
Yeah.
got to see that. That's awful. He
Yeah.
he was killed in front of his family. That's
Yeah.
horrendous. No one deserves that. Like, from a consequentialist side, I wanted the guy deplatformed, but from a humanist
Yeah.
side, not like this.
Of course.
Like
Yeah.
this is horrible.
And I honestly really appreciate you saying that and drawing that really important distinction. I think that people who are on the left, um, which I assume you are. I mean, maybe you're on the right and just disagree with him, but his detractors, let's say, we need to hear more of that. We're not hearing as much of that. We need to be very vocal about it, like calling it out. And if not calling it out, then when we see other people being celebratory about it, um,
Oh,
then speaking up
um,
about it.
yeah, we can talk about
Yeah,
my views on him because I do have a bit to say and I do think that they're worth saying even in these kinds of
sure.
times. But
Yeah.
Objective Ethics just sent a message in the private chat here
Hmm.
about only having about 15 minutes. So I kind of want to
Okay.
make sure that they get their chance. So do you want to swap me out here?
If you're gonna stay around, that sounds good to me. If that's fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Uh,
I'm gonna stick around.
okay.
I'm
Yeah.
here for the
Well,
long haul. Came in a little
so
late, unfortunately, but I'm
that's
here.
all right. No, we'll bring you right back on after him. We'll give him 15. All right.
Alrighty.
All right. See you in a few. All right. All right. Coming in. Hi. So can I hear? Can I?
Can
Sorry,
you hear
I'm
me,
not.
brother?
I'm not even talking right. I've taught three classes today. I can barely uh keep
Can
it
you hear me
together. But
okay?
yeah, yeah, totally, totally. I can hear you.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I I am actually in a hurry. I just got called into an emergency at work, but I just wanted to first of all, I need to say thank
Sure.
you to New Altside. I've really enjoyed listening to them last time they were on your show, so I
Yeah,
think they're going to have a lot to offer a conversation. That was
I think
very
so
gracious
too.
of
Thank you.
them to step aside for me, and I will be very quick because I do have to go. But I just
Okay.
wanted to touch on there's a couple things here really quickly. First of all, I need to be polite and say I do wish you the very best, Mr. McAllister. I understand it's been difficult for you and for probably your friends
Thanks.
and family. And so my sympathy goes out to you. Okay. I don't want to be rude and just skip past that.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you've always been
But
really kind, so I appreciate that.
I appreciate you for acknowledging that. Thank you. Especially since we're on two different sides of the aisle, as it were. Now, I
Yeah,
am
yeah.
getting ready to have a formal debate Friday night about the very thing you're talking about. And I just want to tell you, and I mean this with all due respect, sir, as
Hmm.
always, the idea of pushing society essentially, not the government, as you said, but society
Yeah.
towards a more religious type of an aspect or more religious unity, I think
Hmm.
is a terrible idea. I think it's extremely dangerous. I think it's incoherent. I mean, what religion are you going to push them towards? And I know you're a Catholic, but so does that mean
Yeah.
everybody has to be a Catholic? Because you can't say Christianity, because there's thousands of different ideas about what Christianity even is to different people, and there are some pretty significant differences. Religion is divisive. It's not something that brings people together. It brings certain people together to a particular in group, but it doesn't encompass everybody. It's more
Yeah.
us versus them, as far as I can tell.
So I don't know if you were old enough to remember 9/11, but there was great unity in the country spiritually and religiously after that. And it wasn't just oh, well, it was because Islam attacked us, and so we can't all be as Muslim or something. But it was the idea, like like, do you not expect people to like work out those wrinkles for themselves? Like it became like a very hostile anti-religious attitude after 9/11. The idea that, well, we've got to get rid of religion and so on. But for the religious people, you didn't see division among them. You saw unity among them, and they all were responsible enough to figure out whatever differences they had and whatever agreements they had. They could come together um, in a society and get along despite whatever spiritual disagreements they had. But I think it's a little bit too, you know, I think it's a little bit too much of an overreach of, say, government or whoever's running the show to say no religion whatsoever, to say something like it's a little bit too like helicopter parenting, if you get the metaphor. The idea that, well, you guys shouldn't have any religion because you're not going to know how to behave for one another. I think that people could figure this out on their own, like have them be spiritual and more religious and so on, and then whatever differences they have among themselves, they can figure it out. But to say that, oh, nobody, no, but it's a bad idea to go there, it's kind of, it distrusts people to know what's in their best interest and know what the right thing to do is.
Well, I appreciate that. That's a fair retort. However, I am certainly old enough to know about 9/11, and that's a whole can of worms to try and get into. I'm not a supporter whatsoever of a lot of the things that were
Hmm.
involved with 9/11, and 9/11 was, in fact, proof of what I'm talking about. It was a religious, war, the Muslims and the anti-American and this whole jihadist thing. And so when you talk about 9/11, I don't think you're offering any substance to the case of should we be more religious at all. I think it's proof of why we shouldn't be religious, but that's really a whole separate issue. What I'm talking about is, I'm not talking about eliminating religion either. So I'm not sure if you just misunderstood my point, or if maybe I didn't articulate it clearly, which is probably my fault.
Sure, yeah.
Because
So
I
say
am in a
more.
hurry.
Yeah, say more about what
Yeah.
you mean about what would this look like if you think having a more religious society is a bad idea. What's the alternative? What were you suggesting?
Oh, I think the alternative is to continue on with the path that we've been doing since the Enlightenment, which is what we can attribute to most of the benefits that we've made socially, like eliminating slavery, for example. That comes about from the
No,
Enlightenment and secular humanism. Oh, it certainly does. There
I don't think so.
you cannot attribute. Well, I don't have time for this debate, but
Yeah, yeah,
we'll
yeah.
couch that and we'll come back
We
and have
will.
that
Well,
debate, because
yeah.
I've looked into the history of it, and yeah, you cannot credit religion, especially Christianity, for eliminating
Yes, you
slavery.
can.
That's
Yeah.
certainly
So
not.
we'll put
Certainly
a
not,
pin in
brother.
that. I do want to
Yeah,
come back to that,
we'll
but
put a
yeah.
pin in that. So yeah, if that's, the last thing I would like to say is that you mentioned that there's been nothing said about this suspect, right?
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
would disagree. When I get on the news, I'm hearing a lot about the suspect, and it's not about their motivation or agenda so much as it is what's happening is they're trying to make this a transgender issue. They're trying to link it to transgenderism. Oh, he's got a transgender romantic partner. It's all over social media, and that is a really interesting problem, because first of all, I don't see what that has anything to do with anything with their partner's transgender or not. Who cares about that? Who cares what kind of cereal his partner eats for breakfast? Who cares if it drives a car or rides a bike? I mean, literally, that is completely unrelated to anything that should be relevant to this, and yet it's a major
It
talking point for a certain group of people, it seems to be.
well it So let me just respond to this. So it shouldn't be an issue, but it's because of, like, statistically, demographically, you have seen in recent weeks and months an uptick in the violence in these shootings of transgenders in months and so on. And so it shouldn't be an issue. And I think it was only tracked down and discovered and is now becoming an issue because people were wanting to paint him as MAGA just because he wore a Trump costume on Halloween, just because his parents are Republican, diehard MAGA or whatever. Um, and I think that was just counter evidence that was offered. It's not like, hey guys, everybody look. I think it was more reactionary to say, actually, look at this guy. How could you be
Yeah, but
MAGA
that doesn't make
and
it
also
that doesn't make it right, nor does it solve any problems, because I happen to be friends with two transgender people that are conservative, quote unquote MAGA Republicans. In fact, there's a couple of them that are very proud of it online, who talk about it, who are big names in the, and I don't want to just be throwing people under the bus if maybe this isn't a good time for them politically to be talking about that. But just being transgender doesn't mean that you can't be on the right, doesn't mean
of
you have to be
course,
on the left. So I
of
just feel like
course.
it's an interesting talking point, and I'm politically independent. So I
Mhm.
could make complaints about the left or the
I,
right. I could spend all day
same
trashing both parties. You know what I mean? So I'm not
same
here to
here.
defend one side or the other, but I just think there's some very interesting things that are happening, and I think this whole situation seems to be, whether it's by design or not, it certainly seems to be another thing that's driving a wedge between the people, and the government is benefiting off of this situation right now. And I think that this memorial service is like the one person said, it turned into a political rally. I mean, I see that the government is really taking advantage of this. Well, again, maybe that's not designed. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's some very interesting details that are starting to come to light that show that there's a lot of questionable things happening right now regarding this situation.
So I find it a little bit odd that you find it suspicious that the president and vice president are honoring, members of the cabinet, senators, and so on, are honoring a political assassination, victim. Like if that
No,
you
it's
find
not.
it weird.
No, that's not what I'm. No, that's not. I have no issues with that whatsoever. As far as I'm concerned, they're human beings. They have every right to go to
Yeah.
whatever funeral they want to. Yeah, I got no problem with that.
So is the view then? So like Martin Luther King was also viewed in a similar light, like as a victim of political assassination, and honestly, it's hard to think of another one. JFK might be, another one, but for different reasons. Um, Bobby Kennedy and so on. Other than like the late '60s, it's hard to find another one like this, and so I think partly, socially speaking, it's what's so shocking and jarring is that this ever happened and it's on our screens and our pockets. We can see it over and over and over. Um, and so let's imagine if the president and vice president, nobody like went to his memorial. That I think that would be more strange.
Well,
And
I'm not
not
talking about attending his memorial. I have no issue with that. I'm not sure where you got the impression I was saying that. I'm talking about the advantage and the political bolstering that's happening. So, for example, when they use the terminology, they did this to Charlie Kirk. That's what's being pushed. That's the narrative that's being pushed all over. But they, well, who's they? There was only one. There's only one suspect right
well,
now, and
he
again,
was obviously conservative. I think it was a moderate conservative, not a radical conservative like either. Many people are painting him out to be. I myself am registered independent, so like you, I'm in between. But you see people who are attacking him and attacking his ideas. It's not going to be the conservatives who are attacking him. Yes, they're going to be like radical conservatives, Gorpers, who think that he's just not conservative enough, not white supremacist enough. He did get those criticisms and addressed them, but it's not going to be your MAGA people who are being critical of him. So when there's really hostile language online that are like celebrating his death, it's probably not coming from the conservative side. I think that's what they mean by they.
well,
They did
to
this,
give you
their
an idea.
language, the rhetoric, and so on.
To give you an idea, and this is my own personal experience, so obviously, people can take my word for it or not. I'm a gentleman. I've got no reason to lie to anybody, but I'm a part of a Discord server, regrettably, most of the time, that's a Christian-run Discord server. And I said that what happened to Charlie Kirk was an absolute tragedy. I think that violence in any way, shape, or form is wrong, and this is a horrible thing. However, I did not agree with very much of what Charlie Kirk, the way he presented ideas and the way that he debated people. I found him to be very dishonest and disingenuous. And people responded to that by literally saying, oh, so you just think that Charlie Kirk got what he deserved, which is
No,
literally not even close to what I said. And they're constantly
right.
now echoing this, that, oh, objective ethics thinks Charlie Kirk got what he deserved.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not even
Yeah.
bothering to defend this with these people because, and this is what the right is using, any criticism whatsoever. Anytime that I see a person criticize anything about Charlie Kirk, people on the right are taking that to such an extreme that it just becomes so, like I said, this whole situation is become a wedge, and that wedge pays dividends to political parties, whether it's intentional or not, whether it's by design or not. That's just the nature of the world we live in with this bipartisan government.
Yeah, it's an out of control sort of situation that we find. It's a very watershed moment.
Yeah.
And who can predict like the power of it and what to do with it? And people will try to harness it in their different ways. But yeah, I mean, I think this is where character matters. Like if people are responding to you like that, your character matters. Like it matters what kind of good listener you are. How charitable are you in the interpretations you're giving to people? Are you? And like when it's online discourse, when it's social media, it is so easy to just trash somebody, hit that enter button, that the send or whatever post, and then just be on your way and not take responsibility for your words. And so many people do it. And this has been a hobby horse of mine for years, and now it's like come to the forefront. Like it incenses me so much to see people not take responsibility for their own words and rhetoric. Like, I mean, there's stuff in, speaking of the Bible and morality and so in the Proverbs about controlling one's tongue because it can it's like a sword. It can hurt people. And so especially with the online rhetoric. And I think not only on the left, but like you're describing on the right, I think people need to be a lot more careful. Like and look, there's stuff that I don't agree with about Charlie Kirk. Namely, just one is I don't agree with him that college is a scam. I mean, that doesn't make me enjoy his death, obviously. So you're right. I mean, these people need to be more charitable. But yeah, that really
Well,
grinds my gears. But
let me cut in, and I don't mean to be rude. I do have to actually get off this. I want to just thank that
Sure.
person for letting me jump in again, and for the other people and letting me skip the line like that. And let me say that's based on just respond to what you just said. That's exactly why I challenge people respectfully, but I challenge people to, if they really want to make a point or have a debate with me, to do it online, preferably in a neutral platform where there's some accountability to the situation, because anybody can do the keyboard warrior thing, and we see it all over the place. If you're not willing to put your name out there, put your ideas out there in a format where there's some accountability, you're just going to hide in your echo chamber on your own channel or in your own Discord where you're surrounded by a bunch of clapping seals. To me, that just shows that you're not really able to defend your arguments,
Yeah.
It
doesn't reflect well on them. That's for sure. Yeah.
No, I agree. And we're going to come back one of these days. We're going to talk about slavery and the abolition movement. Okay.
All
right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming in. Take care. All right. So I'm going to bring back New Alt Side. Thank you so much for letting him jump ahead of the line. And thank you for Eastern Thomist. I know you're still sitting there waiting for letting him jump ahead of you. Sorry, it takes about 10 minutes off. But again, we'll restart the clock, give you about 20 minutes or so. All right. So are you there?
Awesome. Sounds great. I'm here. Yeah.
All right.
Welcome
back.
I'm all snug and cozy. I'm in my snuggie.
Good. I wish I was, honestly, because I had an MRI last week and I went to the pain and spine specialist, just as a side note, and some real. I think I'm okay now. I'm sitting on some pillows and stuff, but that sounds nice. What you got going on?
Yeah. Actually, the place I work at, we sell hot chocolate. And then we stopped selling hot chocolate. So now they have to give away all of this hot chocolate to their employees. So I have this massive box of like 50 packets of hot chocolate.
Oh my gosh. You're just bragging at this point, honestly.
I came back from Spirit Halloween. I got some comfort clothes.
That's awesome, man. And the weather is starting to get there as well.
True.
Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit cooler. Like I'm in Baltimore, so it's starting to cool down. Not quite there, but I have noticed a change in the season. Yeah, I haven't gotten a pumpkin spice latte yet, but it's on the schedule maybe.
I honestly haven't tried one before, but I'll get there eventually. I'll get to that level of snug.
Good.
But we were talking about Charlie Kirk, weren't we?
Yeah. So where do you find yourself on all this kind of just so anybody who's listening kind of know where you are, and then we'll just kind of go from there, I guess. What your thoughts are on everything and what you've seen and that sort of thing.
I don't condone what happened to him. I don't condone any political violence. And unfortunately, he was a political figurehead. This is political violence.
Yeah,
And I don't know the motivations of the shooter.
yeah,
I don't I don't know the guy personally.
yeah,
Honestly, I kind of wish I did so I could ask him about it
yeah.
and try and understand him. Um, I think we were so like the whole point of the conversation is about forgiveness, correct?
Yeah.
So
Let's go there.
I yeah, okay. So even if I don't like Charlie Kirk, I don't like violence. I don't like gun violence.
Yeah,
I don't like gun violence
yeah,
at all, honestly. Um,
yeah.
and it's extremely unfortunate. I We can talk about gun violence if you'd like, but since the call's about forgiveness, I'd rather
Sure.
we get into the shooter. Um, and like, what forgiveness sort of entails, you know?
Yeah. Let's
Um,
let's go there, and then if we have time, we can talk about gun violence and your thoughts on it.
yeah, 20 minutes? Yeah, maybe.
For
We'll
sure.
see.
Yeah. All right. If nobody
Okay,
else is in
so
line, so you can take the time. But it's also a good reminder before you begin, if
mhm,
anybody wants to join, there's that. It is a call-in show. Top of the chat box, you'll find the pinned comment. So to join the studio, like the rest of these guys. So, all right, take it away.
absolutely, yeah. Top of the chat box. I've spoken to McAllister before, Dr. McAllister. Great, great personality, incredibly calm calls. So long as you come with a calm approach, you're gonna have a great time.
Of course.
Pretty
I
much
didn't even know what
guaranteed.
to do if somebody doesn't come with a calm approach. I'm just like probably just fight or flight or freeze or something. I'm probably like the freeze. You know? If you like came
Uh,
in aggressive, I'd probably just be like, okay.
all right. Okay, forgiveness. So, I myself, I can't personally forgive the guy, and it's not because I wouldn't. It's because like I'm not in, I'm not the main guy. I'm not the main person that was affected.
Right.
I guess I can forgive him for um the whole video showing up on my feed,
Yeah.
because that I'm sure scarred a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Uh, Not that any murder is acceptable, but it's doubly unfortunate that it was a publicized one, like on
Yeah.
video, kind of.
We've never seen that
And
in history. Yeah.
yeah,
Like that
um,
anyway.
um, I find that the general reaction was not very forgiving, especially as, things sort of changed with the shooter. I
Yeah.
found a lot of figureheads were like screaming and shouting about it. And that's maybe hyperbole because I can only see their messages on Twitter
Yeah.
and not like their live reactions. But like there was people screaming to bring back the death penalty and that it's
Yeah.
on leftists because they're a politically right person. Naturally, that your first assumption would be this is politically motivated and it would be
Yeah.
politically motivated by a political enemy. Um, and yeah, a lot of people not only jump to conclusions, but jump to rather violent conclusions based off their prior assumptions, and that's extremely unfortunate. And it doesn't help when you tune into Fox News and they're praising these people and supporting this kind of violence, which was
What do you
happening around the same day.
what do you mean
Just
jump to violent conclusions? Can you explain what do you mean by that?
like I'm I mean like people making threats, like violent threats towards political enemies in general. Um
On the left or right or both, or what are you talking about?
not on the left. I saw a lot of people celebrating Charlie's death on the left, which I it's part of the reason I didn't really talk about it whenever I was
Yeah.
on your call last time because I didn't really know what to make of it.
Yeah.
Because even if I didn't like the guy and um I wanted him off, off the air.
Yeah, like you
This
said,
technically
deplatformed or
does
something.
that, but that's not great. It's
Right.
not a good thing either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I didn't really know what to make of it, so I didn't really want to mention it. And we had a very nice conversation about something else, about
Yeah.
scientific reasoning, which I think was a very necessary conversation too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But about forgiveness. You're the psychology major here. What's your take on the general shift of things? Um, because I see this. Unfortunately, he was a very politicized figure, so a lot of the reactions are political or based off of your political inferences. He was also a very Christian figure,
Yeah.
and you yourself, you're a Christian, you're a philosopher. Um,
Hmm.
the term is philosopher, right? I'm
That's
not.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. What do you think about the general shift of things from how they viewed and talked about the shooter over time?
Yeah. So there's a lot there. So I
Yeah, there
I
was a
did
lot there. Sorry.
see. Yeah, this is right though. So I did see um a lot of people on the left rejoicing over. I mean, especially in certain places, like X is bad enough, um, but TikTok is just horrible. I didn't see it a lot of it on YouTube. I'm on different platforms. I didn't see it a lot of it on Instagram. Uh, I saw a lot of it on TikTok, and I saw screenshots of a lot of it on Blue Sky, social, whatever, as you would expect.
Hmm.
And because it's like mostly Democrats. So, but I think that says a lot about like providing the environments in which this festers. It's like if I see other people who are affirming what I'm already thinking or what I've already said, that gives me more permission to be out about it. And you see this, I think Greg Gutfeld, I've never listened to the guy at all, but since Charlie's death, I saw clips of him talking about this, and he's had some really insightful things to say about like, when you saw a lot of people who were getting fired over this, they they found themselves in shock because with the algorithms and the echo chambers, they thought that everybody thought like them. So when they vocalized, oh, I wish this guy was dead and I'm happy about it. When they said that, they thought everybody thought that. They thought that they were saying something permissible. And then when their workplace fired him, they were really in shock. They were like, "This is not acceptable." Um, and so, but I think there's a lot there with respect to like how the heck did this get here? And I heard somebody or read on Twitter something about permission structures. Like if you call, for example, if you call somebody a Nazi, you call somebody fascist over and over and over and over and over, then this provides what's called a permission structure to treat that person with utter impunity, utter violence, and just anything is permissible against that person because, after all, they're a monster. And that's what I said earlier. I meant about watching our language, because if it starts there, just don't let the snowball form. You know, um, it needs to stop with that, and obviously, explicit calls for violence or retribution or celebratory remarks about it. Um, those can all be reported and so on, but this gets into what's legal and what's violation of policy versus what's immoral. Like you can be in a really immoral jackass and still like follow all the rules and never break the law. So you can get on X and all these places and be a real terrible person and say things in a coded way. And I think even that needs to stop. Not that it needs to be uh legislated out, but I think that's a thing. Like people need to have character. They need to build character. It's all about character. And it requires people of integrity stepping up and speaking up whenever they see that and just like nipping it in the bud, like show some courage. So that's what I've seen. And there was something else that you had mentioned in there, but yeah, want to push back on this, and then we'll we'll continue with whatever else you wanted to talk about.
Okay. Yeah.
Let you jump in here.
Yeah. You know, unfortunately, I don't really have a lot to add about the conversation with Charlie. At
Hmm.
least revolving around the shooter. A lot of the work that I've sort of done personally has been just sort of addressing him. When it
The
comes to
shooter, you
the
mean?
forgiveness of the shooter, though, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Um, I can't tell if it's like timing based, if it's like or if it's because of political ideals. Um, but as things moved along, as the investigation sort of went through, um, I noticed that people got a lot calmer the more was debunked, you know? Um,
What do you mean?
so
Like
like when it
information about the shooter was debunked?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
information about the shooter.
Yeah.
So I think the earliest
Yeah.
thing that was going on, the Wall Street Journal posted something about um it was transgender ideology on the bullets on the
Hmm.
magazine. And that was that was eventually dismissed, though it took them
Yeah.
quite a while. But it was dismissed because the TRN is the manufacturer on the magazine. Or not the
Oh yeah,
magazine,
yeah, yeah.
the casing, the
On the
bullet
bullet. Yeah.
casing.
Yeah. I'd never even heard that. I'll tell you what I heard. Uh, I never s- looked at it as transgender ideology on the bullets. What was engraved on the bullets, I took to be fascist ideology, and then meme culture about like furry stuff and video games. Like that seems indisputable. I've never heard this about like transgender stuff being engraved on the bullets,
So
but
the Wall Street Journal highlighted the transgender stuff.
oh, that's weird.
Later on,
Yeah.
the story was then pushed that um, on the gun that was left out in the woods, there were on certain bullet casings references to meme culture, and
Hmm.
one of them was vaguely trans related or vaguely gender related, and they completely took that and ran with it. The Wall Street
Yeah.
Journal one, the transgender ideology, that was before all of that came out. So
Yeah.
that was pretty
That's
much
super weird.
entirely dismissed. Um, but yeah, I've seen at least from a person on the left with that kind of perspective, because I am on the left. You were right about that.
Yeah.
My feed, my general feed, YouTube, everything is sort of geared
Yeah.
towards those kinds of stories. So I see the loudest people on the right, and those are the people who are constantly making these issues for trans people, unfortunately. And um,
Got you. Yeah. Yeah. I've
when it
not seen
comes
that.
to the
And
forgiveness of the shooter, the less that I saw they were involved with a trans person, all of these conspiracies getting slowly taken down one by one in regards to his relation to transgender ideology, and it was anti-fascist, Antifa
mhm. Right.
ideology.
Yeah. Anti-fascist. Yeah. Yeah.
The more calm people were, and the more people started to
Oh, I see.
not want the guy to die. They weren't pushing and screaming about death penalty anymore. They were
Oh,
pushing about um praying for him or trying to save his
oh, I
soul.
see. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
And
I think there's a little bit of like cycling here, right? So like you're saying, it was very loud in the beginning and before things settled down with the trans stuff, and then okay, we got that taken care of. There wasn't transgender inscriptions on the bullet casing, but I also saw this. Maybe the reason why the what was it that you just said? Maybe the reason why people are now focusing on forgiveness rather than the death penalty is obviously because of Eric Kirk's speech that just happened, but also um, because it might be cycling through. Because I'll just explain in my circles, I've seen calls for the death penalty, calls for like you know firing squad, so on and so on. Let me just turn it down a little bit. Um, Calls for the firing squad, and then public execution, so on and so on. But I've also seen pushback on that. Like as a Catholic, we recently had this change because a few of our recent popes have come out against the death penalty, And just because it's been a cultural development that we now have facilities that you can house somebody in for life, and that would equal life for life, basically. And so views on that are changing. So now the church's official teaching in the foreseeable future is that the death penalty is wrong. And so I think a lot of Christians are learning that. Oh, that's what the church says. And so that's the cycling, like I'm talking about. They're like, oh, immediate death penalty. Oh, that's what the church teaches. Why do they teach that? It's because if you kill somebody, they can't seek forgiveness and change and be rehabilitated. But if you keep them alive, they could, in theory, be rehabilitated and become somebody better and get back to society and so on. So I think that's just some cycling. Uh, and obviously because of the highlight of Erica Kirk's speech was that she forgave him, that was like so stark. So obviously that's what everybody was talking about yesterday. It's what people are still talking about today. But yeah, somebody mentions here, let me just bring this in real quick. Somebody says here, Christian, a spiritual Eurasianist, I thought that said euthanasia or something. Christian forgiveness is narcissistic and immoral. Without further
Ooh,
elaboration, without the further elaboration on what that means, I don't know what to make of what that means. But did you just
that's a hot take, honestly.
hot take? Okay,
Yeah,
maybe you want to help unpack
that's
this.
gonna be maybe, yeah. Spiritual erasure, that's actually a really cool name. Christian forgiveness is narcissistic and immoral. So
Okay,
I've seen a lot of that when it comes to evangelical Christianity, honestly.
let me just leave
When
this back up.
people believe in a hell and
Mhm.
that there are people who are going to that hell and they will be tortured eternally. Um, Maybe not by a conscious, maybe just by proxy, lake of fire stuff. I think it's outer darkness was the other description of hell in the Bible.
Mhm.
Maybe through Dante's Inferno kind of hell.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. Yeah.
but yeah, there's a very big um stereotype of the snobby Christian who turns the other cheek, scoffs, and says, bless your soul, or bless you kindly, or something, as if they're
Um,
higher or able to judge you because they are Christian and have
did
a
you?
standard of ethics.
Okay,
You
so
know,
I get it. I'm not denying that that happens, but it's like a caricature, honestly.
yeah, it's
It
a bit
is, and
extreme.
it is
Unfortunately,
an extreme caricature of what
those
Christians
caricatures
do when
are
they
the
forgive.
loudest.
Sure,
I've
sure, but like if I were to caricature people on the left, you wouldn't like that any bit, for sure. So, we
no,
care about
no,
truth,
no.
and
Right.
accuracy and precision in what we're characterizing. Um, but I mean, have you watched the video of Erica Kirk at the moment, at least a
Erica,
clip, when at
honestly,
the moment she says,
I,
"I forgive him."
I, I
I
think
encourage you to go look it up.
I saw a news story about it, but I didn't see the video. I'm
Yeah,
sure it'd
because
be
what?
more powerful if I saw her
Absolutely,
genuine reaction
absolutely.
to it.
It's hard to watch without it bringing a tear to your eye. I'm not a crier. Um, and so, yes, I don't deny that what you're describing happens. Um, and it can be used in a very snide and indirect way to, it's almost like, well, bless your heart. It means you're stupid. I'm from Arkansas. That's what we do. We say that, well,
Yeah, the
bless your heart.
Midwest,
He's an idiot.
the Midwest
So,
phrase.
so
Yeah.
that's a way that it's used, and it can be used in a really insidious way. Oh, just forgive him. I'm better than that. Absolutely, that happens, but I think
Um,
it's a caricature, and I don't think
so
I certainly am not convinced that's what was happening with her.
Right, yeah, no, that's obviously no. In that specific instance, no. When it comes to
Mhm.
forgiving the shooter, I
Yeah,
genuinely fully believe that that was not out of narcissistic or immoral
yeah,
beliefs. When it comes to the type of forgiveness that we're talking about here, with Charlie Kirk and the very unfortunate thing that happened, um,
yeah.
I couldn't really see it as narcissistic or immoral because I don't see it as anything Christian forgiveness. It's just genuine forgiveness. You can attribute it to Christian morality.
No, I
Um,
absolutely think you have
y-
to. This is just sorry to cut it off, but I don't think that. Erica Kirk gets to this place without being a Christian.
You don't believe that someone could forgive
I
another
didn't. I
without being a
didn't say that.
Christian?
I didn't say
Oh,
that. I
you
said
mean
I don't
like a
think Erica
person,
Kirk,
like,
because we're talking about this exact instance in this case. So I don't think Erica ever gets to this point. And watch her whole speech. It's 30 minutes. Skip over the applause sections or whatever. Um, but it it is like it's not just like what she's saying, but like why she's giving her why. This is why I'm doing. This is why I'm doing. This is why Charlie did what he did, and so on and so forth. And she doesn't get to that place without being a Christian. It was very theological and theologically grounded.
okay,
Now,
so like her
could
personal
someone
story is very theologically based, right?
absolutely, yeah, could someone forgive somebody else? Yeah, sure, yeah, but it's uh, Christians don't have the market on forgiveness, sure, but on the Christian worldview, if the Christian worldview is true and God exists and so on and so forth, um, goodness is found in God, and anything good comes from God. And so, forgiveness, to the extent that we're able to do it, even people who are heathens and don't have any belief in God whatsoever and live apart from God, whatever, they can still forgive. But that's like seeing truth in another place. It's like I shouldn't be surprised if I see a good in another place. I shouldn't be surprised if I see a truth in another place. So, on the Christian worldview, it wouldn't be surprising that other people can forgive, but it's essentially a kind of a hallmark of the Christian it's a hallmark Christian value of the Christian faith. Like I tell my students when we talk through like City of God, Augustine's City of God, he's contrasting the Roman Empire and the Republic with Christian values. So he thinks that the Greco-Roman had society, they had certain cultural values, and Judeo-Christian values, they have certain cultural values. And what the Romans were interested in, especially in Augustine's time, were interested in like things like conquest and glory and honor and you know wealth and so on. And but if you think about like I try to get students, I'm like, okay, what are the Christian values? Like what does Christianity believe? And then they're all silent and it's all crickets because nobody really wants to talk about this. And I'm like, look, I don't care if you don't think Christians are good. I'm asking you what the Christian values are. Like, even if you think that Christians don't hold up to their values, it's those values that you're trying to identify that are good. The Christian values are good. It's just the fact that people don't hold up to them that's the thing. And so we eventually get to the idea that well,
Ooh,
earmark Christian values are things like forgiveness, humility, mercy, compassion,
okay.
meekness, and so on and so on. Um,
I've uh, I've actually got
but
a lot to
yeah,
say
sure, yeah, yeah,
About Christian values and how people interpret them. Because if you take core biblical teachings, the Bible, I'm a secularist, all right? So forgive me when I say this, but the Bible kind of sucks. Like there's some really good verses there, and there's some beautiful passages about
yeah,
love and what it means, how it's beyond a
absolutely right.
prophecy,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. And then like one book later, they're talking about how you can beat slaves with a rod so long as you don't kill them, and you're perfectly fine. You're fine in the eyes of God. And it's just like it's so hit and miss, and I find the book of the Bible to be so very so very often. And there's certain gems in there that I want to hang on to. And I wanted to do that when I went through my whole Christian phase, where I was praying, I was on my knees in my closet doing exactly what what they said in the Bible when you pray
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
keep it a secret. Um, and all of these things, and it's just and slowly, the more I read, the more I realized, oh, Christian values, at least as they are objectively, kind of suck without your personal interpretations being thrown in there. So I think that a lot of Christian values,
It,
at least
but
as
it,
it comes
yeah.
to what you see in what you're talking about, forgiveness and whatnot, a lot of that comes not from the Bible itself, but from modern interpretations of the Bible from what is currently considered moral.
Not modern. We're talking ancient interpretations. Augustine was one of the church fathers in the 300s. Augustine,
But
who I mentioned, wrote
I
The City
mean
of
by
God.
modern, I mean like modernly acceptable. right? Like it's no
Yeah,
longer it's no longer acceptable to treat your wife as your property, right? But you'll
it,
see dozens and dozens of passages that not only explicitly call them your property, but, say what you can and can't do with them and give different standards for what is a sin between the husband and the wife. And, that doesn't fly in modern times.
I'm highly
I'm
skeptical of this.
sure.
I'm halfway
Yeah,
tempted to
sorry, I
like
can see your
Google.
expression sort of shifting
Well,
around.
yeah, I'm
I'm
skeptical
sorry.
of it because I've heard
Again, I
the
have a lot to say about this.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
I'm
you're the Christian philosopher. It's your show.
no, no,
What's
no.
your take on that?
Yeah, well, I'm highly skeptical, and halfway tempted to like look up, does the Bible teach that women are the property of their husbands? And I've really never heard that before. I've heard other criticisms of the Bible. I've heard the thing about uh, taking a rod to your slave or not doing so, and so on and so forth. That seems, and maybe you're just grasping at things, kind of half memories or something. That's fine, but I don't think that that's one of the legitimate uh, things in Scripture. Correct me if I'm wrong, but. Um, but yeah, when we look through the Bible, it's not just like you said, you have to read it in your own values. I think the same goes for um, reading it wrongly. Reading it wrongly. If you're reading in your own values of like, oh, that's what the Bible says. Well, you're going to get it wrong because you're reading in what you think it says. Um, and it's easy to like look at a surface level kind of, oh, well, it says here Lot slept with his daughters, after they escaped Sodom and Gomorrah. So it's like, hold up, that's not something that's endorsed, or Solomon had, what, 1,000 wives or 100 wives, something like that. So I guess polygamy is okay. But those things are included, and Joseph, I think, killed a person. Moses killed a person. Rahab was a prostitute, so on and so forth. And those things are included not because they want you to do them, but they're real instances that really happened, and why hide them? Like, I would be more suspicious if those things, if it were just like a pristine history, everybody was perfect, there was supernatural stuff, um, and that none of that was ever mentioned. Like, I think it lends more credibility to scripture that these things are mentioned. Um, are they called out? Yeah, absolutely. We see like the year of Jubilee, where you treat your slaves well, you release them into freedom. We see Paul talking about treating your slaves with respect, because slavery in ancient Greece and ancient Rome were not the American Civil War South chattel slavery that we have now today. It was more like a servant in one's home that you had legal rights to, and so it sounds the same and it's used the same
So,
name, but it's an entirely different sort of thing.
sorry, I just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
on that because the whole slavery conversation, I do think actually has a lot of merit. I did look into it. I looked it up. Apparently the whole wife as property thing is horribly taking out two passages out of context, Exodus and Deuteronomy. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, that is my mistake. I totally just spouted
Yeah.
something
Well,
that was an anti-Christian talking point. I am sorry for that.
well,
I didn't really
that
mean to do that.
That's all right, and I'm not
Um,
going to come down on you. Like that massive credit to you for being able to say, actually, whoops, mea culpa, right? Speaking of culpa, and to recognize that, because we're after the truth, and so
right,
yeah, I really
exactly.
appreciate that. Massive credit to that.
Well, I'm glad you appreciate it. I do have talking points about slavery. About like in regards to the chattel slavery
Hmm.
that you were mentioning there. Chattel slavery it so there likely, based off what I've seen in the Bible, there likely was what you're talking about, servitude, between the Israelites in the Bible, because it calls for that. Uh, treat it calls to treat Israelite slaves specifically as as far better than any chattel slavery would be. It says that owning or transferring of those kinds of slaves as if they were property is not acceptable. And conversely also calls them property. So like they're a different type
Yeah.
of property. But they are property as long as they're, they're serving you. They got certain benefits. I believe there was a certain share of the land that they could get
Yeah. Yeah.
after serving, which
Yeah.
is phenomenal, honestly. I
Yeah.
don't agree with the property bit, but the fact that
Yeah.
it calls for to give to the people who helped you is great. Um, and then there's always a distinction between, um, slavery with Israelites, um, and slavery outside of Israelites. In fact, it
Hmm.
very commonly called to enslave people who weren't Israelites. It called to
Yeah.
um, conquer, it called to spread, and it called to enslave those who were not Israelites. Um, there were several passages in the Bible that said that you could treat slaves um, rather differently, depending on whether or not they were Israelites. And, that sort of thing. The Bible, with all of its interpretations, really feels, you know, rather wrong for doing so. I wouldn't say that in modern interpretations that that's
Yeah.
very moral,
So
especially,
let's.
you get it. I've
Yeah.
said enough. Yeah.
No. Yeah. This is well worth thinking more and talking more about, but I think it distracts to the main point here is like Christian morality and Christian virtues are what they are, right? So like say that
Mhm.
say that you take issue with one or 2 points in the Bible. Does that mean that okay, we got to throw the whole system out of Christian morality, or does it mean, which I don't think it does, I think that's a no, or does it mean that um, well, I guess these aren't Christian values anymore because well, we can't talk about compassion and forgiveness and meekness and humility and love as central Christian virtues and values because there's this old verse over here about slavery. I don't think it says that either. I don't think it means that either. I think that both of these things can be true, and that's the very moderate and conservative view that I have and claim that I have. Is like these are the Christian virtues. These are the Christian values that have been with us for 2,000 years and inherited because they're often called Judeo-Christian values. You see some of these even in the Old Testament, like I mentioned, the year of Jubilee, setting the captives free, um, that embodies this spirit of compassion on, compassion on the widow, compassion on the orphan, compassion on the foreigner, those sorts of things. Those values are present in Judaism as well. And so, um, and to say that they're just not there because, oh, there are a couple passages about slavery, I think is kind of missing the main point, if you know what I mean.
Right. I think I get what you're saying, right? Like,
Mhm.
because one aspect of it is wrong doesn't mean that you should throw out the entire basis of it, you know? Especially
Right.
because like it has been super helpful. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, the Bible has been used to interpret that we should own slaves. It has also been used to interpret that slaves should be freed. Um,
Yeah.
it it is a very powerful passage and book and can be used to
I
do
think this
what is
goes to show,
morally
like,
right.
this
I
is actually,
think there's a
sorry, this is
problem though. Sorry, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, so
Sorry.
this is a large reason, not the only reason, but a large reason why I'm Catholic is because now we have as a Protestant, like, and you were probably like an evangelical Protestant background, when you went through your Christian phase. Otherwise you would have mentioned something like I was Catholic or something. But so I grew up
I did
Protestant.
through I went through the evangelical ringer. I
Yeah.
instantly
So
found it very I didn't find it very pleasant. And of the
yeah,
things that I did find pleasant, I didn't find there to be substantial evidence for it,
yeah,
and I've changed my stance. I feel personally a lot better for it. Um,
yeah.
but
That's
yes,
totally
go ahead.
understandable. Well, my point here is like I think that these are criticisms that Catholics have of Protestants. Like you can just pick up the Bible and make it say whatever you want to say. A Catholic doesn't have this issue because they have the tradition of the Church Fathers and their commentaries and the Glossalia and the Magisterium and whole interpretation of what the scripture means, because you can't just pick it up and make it say whatever you want to say. You need an authority, you need help, you need interpretive help. It's like trying to pick up Plato's Republic and make it like get everything that like just one go. You just look at one verse and you completely understand. It's just not going to work. So and other religions have this
I'm
as well, like
sure
especially the
I'm sure that
midrash.
that analogy makes sense to you, but I've honestly never heard of Plato's Republic, and now I want to look into that. I'm gonna write that down.
It's good, yeah.
Sorry,
So
go ahead. Yeah.
it's the same thing in Judaism with respect to the Torah and the Tanakh, having the midrash, the Jewish oral and written commentaries on the scriptures. Like these Jewish authorities weren't as authoritative as the actual scripture, but they helped to interpret. And that's the same thing. You've seen Bible commentaries. Protestants have a bunch that go back to the Reformation that have really proliferated, like Strong's Concordance, Strong's Commentary, and so on and so forth. Is a really big one for the 1800s. That's really, carried on. It's one of the main ones now. But you have even like Augustine in the 300s, Aquinas in the 1200s, Bonaventure in the 1100s. All of these main philosophers, theologians have their own commentaries on Scripture. Just look up Scripture commentaries by doctors of the church. Like everybody has one. Pope Gregory the Great, another one of my heroes, lived in the 600s. He has a great commentary on Job that appears in my dissertation because he's got some great things to say about that and about suffering. My dissertation was on depression. So yeah, so
Yeah,
these church
I got the
fathers, in other hand,
evangelical interpretation of Job, and I don't quite like Job. I would
yeah,
like to see the Catholic interpretation though. That does sound fascinating.
yeah,
Um, yeah. Yeah, there's definitely differences between the two, and because, you have to appeal to a certain figurehead or authority, there becomes this sort of standard by which, um,
yeah,
there's no like contradiction or differences because there is the standard that people agree on. And that
yeah.
standard, is y- I'm forgetting the word for it. But the thing that strikes me the most is that once you have this standard, once you have this, this objective book to which your morals are based out of, and I say objective because it is still a subjective interpretation, even if it's a unanimously agreed one. I say objective because it's a physical thing, it's a physical
Mhm.
list. Um, it sounds like you're getting into the territory of, I think it's deontology, the thing that Kant talks about, where you
Yeah.
have a certain set of principles that you need to follow no matter what. In this case, you have your duties that you must fulfill, and the reason be that, God commands you to do these things. We ought to do this
Mhm.
because God commands it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, and in that sense, I feel like Catholic teaching becomes very subject to the criticisms of deontology.
How's that?
As well?
How does it become subject to the criticism of deontology? Because in my view, like the way I see it, and I think this is right. I don't just say in my opinion. I know it's a lot of people are like, oh, it's just my opinion. But when I say in my view, this is like the way I'm seeing it from my perspective and kind of taking everything as a whole. So in my view, I see it as the Catholic fathers and theologians and doctors of the church unveiling what are the duties, the God-given duties, the deontologic duties. Like they take it as like a revelatory insight, and because of the wisdom given to them by God, and because of their training, education, and so on, and the hard work and dedication they put towards this stuff and all the study, they have certain insights and they have certain training that can uncover um, those duties. And you might think, well, that's a monopoly on this. Now we got the oligarchy telling us what to do. I think that's it's a cynical view one could take with respect to that. But I think that that's the right process. Yes, you could do it in a corrupt way if you have terrible people who are leading this up and trying to twist things. Sure, yeah, you could end up bad, but it's also the right way to do things too. If you have really good, morally upstanding people who are in place, who are full of wisdom, that's exactly what you want. You wouldn't want to be out there on your own. Like we stand on the shoulders of giants.
I, yeah, that's a fascinating take on things. That wasn't exactly the critique that I was going to get into. I
Okay.
was going to compare deontology to consequentialism, or
Okay.
utilitarian
Yeah.
thinking, where it's about the outcome rather than the duty itself or the action itself. Um, so from my point of view, I've
Hmm.
often seen Catholic or Christian perspectives be very deontological, that's a mouthful, deontologically based, where they have, these standards, they have the commandments, and they have the rules that almost all Catholics have to play by.
Hmm.
Of course, there's some variation. And then I've seen secularist teachings, which almost always are consequentialist, are
Hmm.
about, okay, if this happens, then what are the consequences? And are these consequences um, positive or negative? Usually, this is in terms of suffering. Um, you know,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, we generally, as a society, have deemed suffering to be poor. I myself hate suffering. I don't want to suffer. I've experienced it myself, and as such,
Hmm.
I want other people to not experience suffering.
Yeah.
And I think very consequentially, based off of very consequentially based off of that suffering, when it comes to um, as an extreme example, we could use murder. And I don't want to conflate it
Hmm.
with what
Of
happened to
course.
Charlie Kirk,
Yeah.
because that's fresh on our minds. But
Of course. Yeah.
like, if we say Hitler, right? Very evil guy, very terrible bad guy, right?
Yeah.
From a deontological perspective, it is our duty not to murder.
Right.
And as such, we would probably incarcerate Hitler. We would probably try to um, you know, get Hitler off of his standing, or, so that he may not hurt other people. Um, from a consequentialist perspective, from my
Hmm.
view, if I saw Hitler, um, and had the ability to, you know, kill him, murder him, even if, like from a deontological perspective, it is our duty not to murder. Consequentially, um, this would be, you know, this would probably be the fastest way to ensure the minimal suffering of as many people as possible, and
Hmm.
ensure that, there's no escape from it. He doesn't get out or wreak havoc, that sort of thing. And I'm saying this in this hypothetical,
Right.
um, and because I'm trying to justify murder, so I need to use a pretty extreme
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
But this pretty extreme example, I do think it stands well with consequentialism, but it doesn't stand well with deontological reasoning.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that when we're talking about a society or a large group of people, you're going to get a lot of these fringe cases where, um, you know, deontological ethics can't really apply and still be what I would consider moral. And I would much rather look
Okay.
at the consequences, and I find that much more enveloping. It's
Yeah.
much higher under the umbrella.
Okay. I see what you're saying. So, do you take, so assuming this is right, do you
Yeah, I
take
did say a
Catholic?
lot there. I am
No,
sorry.
that's all right. I think I got a good grasp on this. So, assuming you think that, which I think is right, that the Christian view includes a lot of deontological duties, like the commandments, for one, like don't murder, for example, that these are sometimes going to be in conflict with what you ought to do. Like it should sometimes be permissible to violate that command not to murder by killing Hitler, for example, if consequentially, if we go with the consequentialist theory of action, like utilitarianism would be the moral view, hedonism could be another view. I want to prevent suffering. I want to protect utilitarianism. I want to protect the greatest good for the greatest number of people. You would be able to eliminate him and do that, but you have to be able to have this exception. So I don't, first of all, so I think that summarizes what you said. Now, my take on this, I don't think you have to choose one or the other if you're a Christian or a Catholic. I think that, in fact, I think that these are novel creations. There's evidence for this in the history of ideas that utilitarianism didn't really begin robustly, that is, until John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham in the 19th century. So we're talking like 1800 years after Christ. And and so, of course, they were like hedonists, like Epicurus in ancient Greece, who could have been considered a consequentialist in the sense of, I'm going to pursue the pleasure and avoid the suffering. He had a pretty robust theory with respect to that, and that created the good life. I mean, there's a lot here, like you'd have to really break each one of these down. I'm actually in the middle of like teaching on this. We just
Oh,
taught on
okay.
ethical
So
egoism this
I
week,
guess I
and then
picked a
like
good time to ask about this then.
yeah, we taught on I taught ethical egoism today, and on Thursday I'm talking on hedonism, and then we go to utilitarianism, and then we go to virtue ethics, and so all these different ethical theories. But I think that you don't, as a Christian, I don't think you have to limit yourself to just one, uh, because these ethical theories, as they're presented to you in philosophy, very often are, especially the modern ones, like utilitarianism from 19th century, like hedonism, like ethical egoism from the 20th century. Um,
And
those are
these
all
are very
modern,
old ways of thinking, right?
yeah,
We're
these are all
talking,
modern
yeah.
novel inventions, whereas the Christian view, a classical understanding of ethics, embodies a sort of virtue ethics with some deontological duties sprinkled in. But again, like it's not, let me just make a quick case for this. Like, it's not just about duties. I think the correct moral or ethical theory on Christianity is virtue ethics. First of all, because that's the only one that's really old enough to really vie for candidacy here. But also, it's because, like, say there are a couple of deontological duties sprinkled in. That's not inconsistent with virtue ethics, which cares more about character, like why you are the person building virtue is and not and eliminating vice and so on. And I think there's evidence in the Gospels and in the Old Testament, like I think in Joshua talks about how the Lord looks at the heart and of men, not the outer appearances. And in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talks about you know, when you say this is lust, but I say just looking at a merely at a woman, you know, that's lust in your heart. So it seems that there's consistency across Old to New Testament, that it's more about what is in your heart, or in other words, what's in your character, and this whole emphasis on forgiveness and turning away from one's old life. That's all character development and spiritual development. So I think that that's, if I were to just put my finger on like one Christian theory of ethics, I think virtue ethics would win out immediately for those couple of reasons. You have evidence in scripture of it, the emphasis being on character, and it's the one that's really only true candidate that's old enough to really qualify. But that being said, a focus on character does not preclude having deontological duties. Like, I need to be a person of high character, but being a high person of character enables me to carry out the duties that are required of me, if that makes sense. So they go hand in hand. It's not mutually exclusive. If that helps. Does that help at
Okay.
all?
So I think that does help. So yeah, I think I get what you're saying when it comes to deontological views.
Mhm.
You may have this list of duties that, you ought to do, but those duties don't necessarily have to be so rigid or refined to the point where you do have these fringe cases, right?
They could be, so there's the duties themselves that are like the
Right,
laws or commands. Um,
right.
it's not about how rigidly defined or not that they are. They need to be good laws and good commands, of course. But assuming they're coming from a perfect God, on that assumption, there would be good laws, good commands. So then it's just about, not about how rigid or exacting of you that they are, but it's how well I can conform to that. And so being a person of high character enables me to conform well to those laws, even if they are really exacting.
Okay. Yeah. Um, that is. I'm trying to place
It,
it.
yeah,
But yeah,
this is something that I'm
I
not
think I get
like.
what you're saying. When it
Yeah,
comes
it's not
to
something
a
I've
perfect
really.
God, because it's a perfect God, those duties should be completely in line, and the
Mhm.
consequences of following said duties should be completely in line.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, I I
I
think that's going to be like a major disagreement because even as I was going through my Christian phase, like I
mhm,
was going through the sort of the cycles and reading through the Bible, I never found God to be perfect. I
mhm,
know it was constantly declared, but I've seen the thing. I've just reading the Old Testament, especially, has a lot of tragedies that I can't associate with a perfect being. Um, and I know I'm not alone in that one. So I think that's going to be like a
yeah,
major
yeah,
disagreement with us.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So
because
this actually this was said a while ago, but right here, this gets into what you're talking about right now. I think it may be gone now, but he says if the Bible is the word of God, one mistake is enough to throw it all out. Um, this kind of tracks with what you're saying, the idea that I don't even buy into the assumption because earlier I said, let's assume God is perfect. On that assumption, he would give good laws. And you're challenging that assumption. You're saying, well, he may not be perfect, and I have good evidence that he's not. I think that goes with this. Let me explain what I mean. Because if the Bible's word of God, one mistake is enough to throw it all out. I don't think so. I don't think this is right because first I need to take stock. I need to think, is that a true mistake, or is it just something that I saw in there that I didn't feel like jived with what I already knew, and it kind of like it triggered an intuition that it was like a violating of an intuition that I like deeply held or something. Um, it seems intuitively that genocide of the Amalekites is a bad thing, like
yeah,
so
be-
right like
because genocide is bad, right?
exactly yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that so if I were to take this position that this guy says, one mistake, and I don't have to listen to any of it. Like this was in the context of our conversation earlier about like, well, just because there's some stuff in there about slavery doesn't mean that it invalidates everything that's a Christian value, principle, and so on. That's the what I was saying when this person wrote that. I still stand by that because the one mistake that this person is referring to is just one's construal of what the Bible says. And this gets into like the authority again. Like I need to make sure that it's actually saying what it's saying. Did genocide occur? And then I need to have like an actual historical contextual understanding, a theological understanding. I need to have a good understanding of what kind of God would do that. Whether it's in his will. We talked about this on another Colin show. The idea I made the case that it was like God is actually not uh well, let me put it this way. Nowhere in scripture, like as atheists and secularists, they want to say, well, God is not holding up to his own commandments. It seems like he's making an exception for himself. Problem with that is that nowhere in scripture does it suggest that God gave those commandments for himself. So do not murder. He gave that command to his creation, not to murder. He doesn't say that
Right.
to himself. And if God
Yeah.
takes a
That's the thing
life,
about
that's not a murder on a Christian view. That's retributive justice. That's God gives life and he takes life away and so on. And that might seem like really foreign and well, that's unfair because we're not allowed to murder, but God is. But it's like it falls into that same trap that I've tried to identify before on here, like the idea that if you think of God just as like another one of us, like you're gonna fall into a lot of confusion. You know what I mean?
right, because as the text say, he is a higher being. He's a form that I I don't even think is physically described in the
Mm-mm.
Bible.
No.
Um, but y- the thing is that when you have this difference in standard, it's very easy to get angry at that kind of difference in standard,
Yeah. Yeah.
because he claims to be perfect. He claims to be not only all powerful, but all benevolent, and
Hmm.
then causes the suffering unto his children. And though that contradiction, it feels like an extreme contradiction to me.
It's
Especially when we're talking about sinful people who no doubt would not get a seat in heaven, and as such not only would have suffered majorly, when we're talking about like Sodom and Gomorrah, where an entire city was burned asunder, men, women, children, livestock,
Mhm.
everything gone in a flash. Um, and it seems horrible to not only do
Yeah,
that, but then to perpetuate that you yourself are perfect. And
yeah,
I'm saying you as in terms of God, not you.
yeah,
Hopefully, you
yeah.
didn't cause Sodom and Gomorrah.
No,
Uh, uh, and and then there's also a different layer to it because not only are they calling themselves perfect, but perfection is based around, at least this is what I understand. I got the evangelical teaching, right? Perfection is based around what is holy and sinless. And both of those things are based off of God's own will, his
hmm
own
mm,
consciousness, his subjective interpretation of morality, which I myself heavily disagree with if
yeah,
he's going to be causing tragedies like Sodom and Gomorrah or, the we could go into the passages about slavery again.
hmm
And it's just, again, I'm hit with this roadblock that even if they are this secondary being, it seems impossible to attribute perfection to the secondary being because of the tragedies that he has caused, you know?
yeah. So I hear you, and I sympathize with this. But the way you're framing it is like, um,
Oh,
they
I
tell me it's
apologize if I
perfect.
framed incorrectly.
No, that's fine. No,
It's not my
but
intent.
let's just kind of work. No, I'm not saying it's wrong. I want to follow the reasoning, and then I'll kind of want to try to frame it differently to see how this sits with you. So, like, the reasoning
Okay.
that I'm hearing um, is that they tell me God's perfect, but I see all these things, and I, if I may be so bold, is to say, and I don't think that's right. You know, as arbiter here, I don't think that's right. And you feel free to have that sort of intuition that like something's wrong here. That's I think that's a good sign.
All right.
It's your conscience working. Um, a couple of things here too is like what is conscience and why rely upon it. Um, a Christian can answer that. It's given by God in the natural law and access to that natural law given by God. But an atheist, somebody who just believe in any divinity whatsoever, I guess you're only going to find conscience in biology or in social construct, and then it's just like how is that reliable at all for assessing? But suppose you have this intuition, right? And you flag this as like I don't think that's right. Um, and then from that you say, well, I guess he's not perfect. But what if you started with instead? This is what I'm suggesting, like kind of flipping and different framing. What if you said, okay, I'm just going to assume that God is perfect, and I see this thing that is said of him. Um, First of all, it looks like you dropped, but I'm going to keep going. First of all, I see this thing that is said of him. First of all, I need to be clear that it's actually what is said. I'll add you to the stage here. I need to be clear it's actually what is really said. So making sure I'm reading the actual text rather than sort of commentaries from internet people about the text, reading what the actual
Right.
text says, getting into that. But my methodology and my method of approach would be this: assume perfection, reading the text, not just would a perfect God do that, but like how do I explain given God's perfection? It's actually it's called Bayesian probabilistic reasoning. Have you ever heard of Bayesian probability? It's like if
I've
you've
heard of
ever done
probabilistic reasoning,
yeah
but
yeah
not
yeah
heard of Bayesian probabilistic reasoning.
yeah it's
Is
Thomas
there any
Bayes.
difference?
Thomas Bayes in the 17th, 16th century, he was an English clergyman, go
Okay.
figure, came up with
Yes.
probability calculus. And if you're familiar with like SAT, ACT, I know it's on the GRE, this like probability, like given given this, like, okay, given this many marbles are out, and this is what it started with, this is the probability. So if you think in terms of that, this probabilistic reasoning, given perfection, would I expect to see this? And you're going to say no, but also given background priors into like, okay, I'm evaluating this as an imperfect being. And so, given God's perfection, and also given that I'm an imperfect being with not necessarily perfect analysis here, what should I expect to see? And I think that changes the reading of the text right there. It's like I need to be a little bit more reserved in my judgment and my intuition. My intuitions could be wrong for all I know. First of all, I don't even know if they're reliable in the first place on evolutionary perspective or social construction. I could just be, for all I know, it could be in Nazi Germany, and like that could be my socially constructed intuitions, and I'm just getting this all wrong. I think that it's right. So
Right, and
so
that's the danger. That's the kind of the danger behind trying to base your morality based off of what is currently socially
yeah,
acceptable.
or even
Yeah, and
evolution,
I've
even evolution, because if I can I really trust my conscience if it's just a product of a mindless, um, blind,
I think we're gonna
unguided
get
process.
into yeah, we're gonna get into like talks about determinism and whatnot.
Of course,
When
yeah, and
we
this is at
talk
play
about
here as
that.
well. Yeah,
But like conversely,
yeah,
I can talk about determinism, and I actually find that if the God of the Bible is perfect and all-knowing and has a plan, that Christianity then becomes incredibly deterministic. Um, but that is a conversation for a little bit later because I wanted to talk about more or less, um, what you just mentioned regarding, God being assuming firsthand that God is perfect and then sort of reading through the Bible based off of that.
yeah.
And um,
Not just assumption that he's perfect, but also assumption of my imperfection in reading the text. Does that,
exactly.
certainly that would
Um,
change the reading, the analysis of
s-
what you would expect to
it
find and
it would change the
conclude.
reading, and I would find that I don't have a basis by which to judge that God in the first place,
Yeah,
because to assume that he is perfect, I would have to rip up a lot of my fundamental moral standing, and that would involve rethinking my stance on um, suffering, which I have. I did go through that sort of process when I went
yeah,
through the Bible my first time around, when I went through, that Christian phase. I went through the Bible and I assumed, okay, surely there must either be a reason or maybe there is something after death. There's an afterlife that makes that suffering worth it consequentially. Because those are the only things that I can really think of in my head as justifying what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah or any of the terrible tragedies that take place in the Bible. I think the thing that crushed that thinking the most, though, was when I read through Kings, and I can pull up the text here.
hmm
It'll take me a sec to find it.
yeah.
But in the
First and
text,
Second Kings
God,
is yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, Kings is kind of heart wrenching to me when I was walking through the Bible with that sort of stance.
hmm
There's a story where um, there is, I can't remember if it's one child or children, as in multiple, but they cast the wrong incest into an incest burner, and immediately God ignites them ablaze, kills them, then demands of the community to not mourn their passing lest they meet the same fate. Um, I can pull up the exact passage. That was gut wrenching.
hmm
I couldn't see that as a perfect being acting perfectly and doing something that would cause so much suffering. Dying by being on fire. Um, it hurts. It's not exactly a
Yeah,
very painless way to go, for starters. So that there's immense suffering in that kind of death. And then to say to not mourn that death, not
yeah,
to go over those feelings, not to address them in the slightest, but to continue
yeah,
as they were, um, else at the risk, at the threat of meeting the same fate that they just watched their
yeah.
children face. And
I
that I am sorry, but
I can
I
tell
have a
you're.
line, and that's where it's
Yeah,
drawn.
yeah.
You know,
I can tell
I
you're
could see
you're.
Sodom and Gomorrah if the afterlife was
Yeah,
so much more worth it, and because they were facing all of that sin, maybe this was a time, I believe, before Jesus was came down to earth during Sodom and Gomorrah. So maybe the afterlife worked a little differently and they didn't quite go to hell and they faced some sort of redemption. That's how I justified it in my mind, to make it
Yeah.
worth it, to make it consequentially make sense. But something like that, what happened in Kings, I draw a line somewhere,
Yeah. Well, I can definitely tell you're empathic, with stuff, maybe an empath yourself, very feel the suffering of others. And that's that's a great thing to rejoice in. That's awesome. I wish I was more
I can
empathic
appreciate that you
sometimes.
can see that.
Yeah. I wish I was more sometimes. Not that I'm cold-hearted, but so you can
Oh
see that.
no,
And you've
no.
illuminated it for me that I've never considered that. And you're right about those things. Now, what I would recommend, strongly recommend, if you come across
Hmm.
that, the first thing I would do if I had a difficulty, I don't have a difficulty about this, but if we were to sit down together and look at it,
Yeah.
if this really gave you trouble, the first thing I would do, or if I had a personal difficulty, I would look up that exact passage. I would type in 1 Kings 16:12 or whatever the heck it is, plus commentary. I would immediately go to commentary and I would look at what Christian theologians have said about that passage, because it's obviously one that's bothersome. They've got to say something over the millennia. They couldn't have just ignored this obvious thing. They got to say something about it. So I want to know what they say about it. And if I find one that's unsatisfying, I go on to the next one. What did this other person have to say? Because there's not just one standard commentary, there's multiple. I might even go into the historical commentaries. Okay, maybe these guys in the 20th century really don't get it. Maybe they have their own prior commitments that really don't allow them to see how bad this is. Let's see if some other historical theologians have something else. So, like Bonaventure, Augustine, Aquinas, Irenaeus, uh, Gregory, these people are going to have their own commentaries on that exact book of the Bible. They'll have something to say about it. And I would just sit with that. What makes it okay for God to do this? And then, okay, well, if they want to throw out these things about sovereignty and holiness and so on and so forth, which I imagine what they would go. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'd imagine that's probably what I anticipate them going there. At that point, I would want to track down those. I would want to be like, okay, I got to explore this concept of sovereignty because it sounds like bullcrap to me. What makes God so good that he's sovereign? How does that fix everything because he's sovereign? And I would want to
Right.
spend
That
an
sounds
intensive
like appeal
study on
to authority.
sovereignty.
That
Yeah.
sounds like appeal to authority, which is actually a lot of Christianity gets that kind of critique. A lot of theologies do, that praise a single God.
I can tell you
Especially a perfect
philosophically,
one.
I can tell you philosophically that sovereignty involves a transcendence of such, it's beyond what we can comprehend, as you were describing earlier, so transcendent
Where
that
like
it's
God
almost has
never
no
is
relation.
never given a physical description.
Right, but not only in physical description, but also in authority and in power and in being itself. Philosophically speaking, he's absolute being itself, not just a being that is another being in a universe full of beings. He is being itself. He is existence itself, philosophically speaking, and he's
Huh.
the ground of all reality. So if that's the picture, then suddenly sovereignty looks wildly different than just a tyrant who does things to fit his own agenda. You know what I mean? If he is existence itself and is the ground of all reality, then I've got to try to figure out what that means with respect to that passage. That's the way I would track it down. Just not knowing anything
Okay.
about the package or the passage. That's how I would track that down. And I found if I
Okay.
encountered some
See.
things I thought were quick and easy excuses, I wouldn't just say, if I'm trying to be honest and really know and learn, I wouldn't just say, "Oh, that sounds like excuse." I would say, "Okay, tell me more about sovereignty. Tell me more about holiness." Well, I've heard of holiness, but it's like a nebulous term. It's almost like honor or glory. It's like I've heard of it. I don't. What does it mean for this passage? So I would look into studies, theological unpackings of what holiness is and why that matters for what I just saw, and how's that going to excuse this, so to speak, or help explain it.
Right. Yeah, we're talking about explanation. There's no real
Yeah,
excuse for what should be a perfect being.
yeah,
And that's something that I actually kind of wanted to get into next about, you
Mhm.
mentioned determinism. You didn't say the word outright, but you did say, um, you talked about how if we could trust our consciousness, if it is um, effectively determined by the outcome of, you know, oh, I
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah.
take, I don't want to put words in your mouth,
No,
but
that's all
I
right.
also
I'll
don't want to take it out of
rehash.
context.
I'll review. And I guess we'll go. It's 8:40 my time. We'll go another. We'll go till 9 max, and then I've got to get to bed.
Okay, I'm
I'm the kind of
sorry.
person that unless no, it's all right. I'm the kind of person that unless I make myself go to bed, then I will stay up. I'm such a natural night owl that like, I've got to force myself, and so I will get in
I've
bed,
been
but
there.
like you are now, all snuggled up. I will get in bed, but then like lay there until 3 a.m. and it sucks. So yeah, so I gotta have a cutoff for them. But to review, like what I was saying earlier, the idea was that like your conscience. So your conscience on the Christian view is it actually the word itself means con means with in Latin, like
Mhm.
conqueso in Spanish, and then scientia. It almost looks like the word science because conscience, scientia in the Latin just means knowledge. Obviously translates to science too, but it means knowledge. That's why the sciences are like bodies of knowledge. So the word itself just
So
means with
directly
knowledge.
translate with knowledge. Okay.
With knowledge. So okay, with what with knowledge of what? It is with knowledge of the natural moral law, not like physical laws of nature, but the moral law. So the
The
natural law,
natural
when
moral law.
yeah. So
That's
sometimes
interesting because that sounds very religious.
yeah,
That, that
it's
that sounds like it's
philosophical.
very
So
rooted in theology.
yeah, so it's philosophy. So and specifically so because then it's often get just gets called the natural law. But I
Hmm.
throw in the word moral there to highlight that it's not a law of nature. It's basically the moral fabric of the universe. Like certain things are wrong and certain things are right, and like our opinions don't have any bearing on that. Like it is wrong to try to dunk a puppy's head under the water just to see what will happen. Like that's wrong. Doesn't matter anybody's opinion about it. It's wrong. Like you know it,
Hmm.
I know it, you shouldn't do it, right? Holocaust bad,
Right.
slavery bad. We know these things are wrong. How do we know them? Because uh, of the natural law. Like if you don't believe in the natural law, not all people are natural law theorists, but I am. Augustine is. Aquinas is. Many Christian thinkers are not just Christian thinkers though. But if you don't believe in that, you have to find some alternative as to why we know these things are wrong. If if we just kind of
So
have an intuition about it, so that's what the conscience would
unfortunately,
be.
I can't directly relate because I don't believe that anything has inherent or is and there is an inherent moral reason or law. I'm big on what's it called? I think it's called I think the direct name is cosmic nihilism, whereas nothing inherently or morally, so to speak, is objectively true, and that it is us who places these values on things. It is up to us to not only within a society socially, but also towards ourselves individually, determine what is good based off of what we currently know.
So
And
that's actually good news to me because that means I get to go to bed early. Because if cosmic nihilism is true, there are no values whatsoever. Not that we're not seeing eye to eye, but like that means it entails that like truth doesn't matter, goodness doesn't matter. We live for nothing. We die, heat, death in the universe. All this is meaningless. It's just sounds that are coming out, which ultimately mean nothing. No values, no purpose in life, and there's no truth. Nobody's right. There are no principles. Nothing like that. Is that what you really
that
like?
is so that latter part is fascinating. So the previous part, that truth doesn't matter, I believe is objectively true. In the grand scheme of things, it won't matter. We will die as the sun explodes or the heat death commences. In the grand scheme of things, sure.
I see what you
What
mean.
matters is the value that we attribute to things. And in that sense, we attribute value to truth, not naturally or through any sort of naturalistic principles. And that also doesn't mean that there is no truth, because we can objectively see things happen. Like I have a cup here that held my hot chocolate at one point. I can drop it. It's gravity. This is an objective truth or a law, as we call it in. I say we, I'm not a scientist, nor do I have a PhD, but this is a law in science, gravity, the law of gravity, that a force will cause an object to fall down. Um, Ultimately, it doesn't matter that there's gravity here. If nothing matters, then neither does gravity. But because I like being able to stand up, I like having gravity. Gravity matters to me personally. It matters to a society that has been built around gravity. If gravity were to suddenly go away, I don't think a lot of people would make it, honestly.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and it would be incredibly unfortunate. So I place a lot of value
I see what you're
on
saying.
this objective truth.
So I see what you're saying, and I think it's an honest position. Honestly, I think more. I wish more people would just admit to this, because if God doesn't exist, none of this matters. Like, people want to say things like, I find it hard to like find actually consistent nihilists, people who are atheist and nihilist, people who say God doesn't exist, but that's okay. You can create your own meaning. That would be the existentialist view, or absurdism. This is a whole joke, and so on and so forth. But like, to be a staunch nihilist means it's very depressive. It's a very bleak view ultimately. Now, maybe you probably don't stay there, but I think that even on an existentialist view where you create your own meaning, like, oh, I guess the purpose of my life I'm going to create for me is going to be like to I don't know, break the home run record, steal as many bases as I can or
Mhm.
whatever. Like, it's going to be the purpose for me, but like ultimately that doesn't matter either. It's, I think, to even have an existentialist view where you're like creating meaning, in reality you're a nihilist. And I think more
Yeah,
people should admit that. Like, so I
I
props
yeah.
to you for
Um,
admitting that, because that's just being consistent. Like, if God doesn't exist, none of this matters.
I think ideological consistency is very important when you're talking about, how you deal with the world, your moral standing, and how you tackle life in general. I guess is kind of the way we put it when we're talking about philosophy. Having consistent ideals is very important. Morals and ethics both have huge weight in on those ideals. So making sure they stay the same is important. I'm just repeating myself at this point.
Well, let
Sorry,
me
bud.
ask you, so
Yeah?
if you so let me just put, basically, I may have mentioned this last time, but ultimately here, this exhausts the possibilities right here, that morality ultimately can only come from one of three places. One, it's transcendent, so it comes from some divine source, some supernatural source, something external like God. Two, it is socially constructed, or three, it is evolutionary or biology that gives it to us. So which one of those would you say? Obviously not number one. So would it be like socially constructed, or would it be a biological?
I think it's a mix between biological and social. So,
Okay.
biologically speaking, because we are aware of one another, we are aware of, I know you personally. I can see you through the computer screen, and I can empathize with not only your emotions, but sympathize with your situation. I place heavy value, uh, both of those things, empathy, sympathy, and any suffering that you might incur that could negatively detriment either of those, um, are evolutionary, right? Those do come
Well,
via evolutionary processes, to which
well,
we
that's the thing.
develop
Why
as a
why
social
trust
creature
them? But then why trust them? Because
because of the
evolution is
consequences.
blind. Evolution is blind. It has no guide. There's no like God hand, watching intelligent designer watching the process, make it unfold the way it ought to be. It's blind. It's undirected. That means it's mindless. So
I
why
wouldn't
think
say
that
blind
it
so
is
much as
it
with the
it's
vision of a
undirected?
mole rat, because while it doesn't have an ultimate end goal, it certainly
Right.
has a whole bunch of mini goals that it slowly reaches towards.
But
And of course, sorry,
notice that those goals are not directed towards the truth or what is reasonable, let alone to what is morally good. And I can
sure,
unpack
they're
that
not
if you want.
directed towards the truth. When it comes to what I was talking about, both empathy and sympathy,
Yeah,
both of those are directed towards survival. As a
that's right.
social species, it is incredibly important that we feel these things so that not only can we help one another, but we're not left alone whenever, we need to rely on one another. So having strong emotional capabilities is important towards surviving as a group. And
What
then
about individuals,
procreating,
though?
which is as individuals. So
Yeah,
like
so like,
outside of a
I
society?
mean that. Well, because no, in a society too, because we could talk all day about like, I mean, because evolutionary goals really are for the success of the species, not the individual organism. But my moral behavior really just encompasses me as an individual, not as a species. My moral behavior
Well,
has, I
true.
mean,
I'm
who
talking
cares
about,
what we
sorry, I was
humans?
talking
So
about ethics, not morals. Ethics being more societal than morals, which are far more about yourself and how you handle life, right? So yeah, that's totally true. Um, you're making weird expressions. I feel like I got something wrong there.
yeah, no, well, that's fine. That's fine. I usually don't see a distinction between ethics and morals, but I see what you're saying. That it deals with like the political, the communal level, as opposed to like individual. So, what about the individual? Let's
Right.
say, for example, that I have it. Let's say that I'm in a position to exploit somebody or to use
Mm-hmm.
somebody. I know that it's not going to affect, like, I can pull that off, no problem. It's highly immoral to do so, but what grounds could you say, what grounds could you say that it is immoral? It's not going to affect the propagation of the species. Species will be just fine, and I'm going to get what I want. One person, survival of the fittest, one person going to fall to the wayside, but I'm going to get mine. So, like, it doesn't seem to account for that immoral behavior.
So if you're in the position to take advantage of someone, I think I kind of see what you're saying from this sort of nihilistic based philosophy. With uh, any sort of morals, why wouldn't you take advantage of someone if you're not only in the position to do so, but wouldn't incur consequence from it?
Yeah.
Because yeah, in that case, that's where you need to. So this is interesting. You're giving me a brain teaser because I've not really thought about that, have I? Um, I guess the first thing that I would talk about is that in regards to how empathy and sympathy were both evolved based on suffering. And ultimately, it wouldn't affect the propagation of the species. Ultimately, it would not matter to anyone else. If you choose to not let it matter to you, then that is ultimately your choice. You can't choose whether or not it matters to the person that you affect or whoever you screw over by taking advantage of them. And as a consequence, they are suffering regardless. So the reason why I personally wouldn't take advantage of that person is because it's not because of the end ultimate goal of propagating the species, right? It's not so
Mhm,
that, the best genes live long or forever.
mhm.
Um, but it would because that person would incur undue suffering or harm. And I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't wish that on another
Why
person.
wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I want that? Because again, like evolution only, it doesn't select for true behavior. It doesn't select for morally good behavior. It only selects for success of the species, not the success of the organism. Only success of the species, propagation of the species. That's what it selects for. So it doesn't select for me knowing what's true. So that is a big problem for my conscience. If I have moral intuitions that are violated, who cares? I don't have reason to trust them because if I'm evolved through a mindless process, I have no reason to trust my conscience, and it doesn't select for what's morally good. So there's no reason to trust my conscience on that regard either. So you're saying that like I would not want the suffering of this person. What would you say to somebody who would want the suffering of this person, so long as it doesn't violate, evolutionarily speaking, um, it still allows for the propagation of species. Cool, check, that's taken care of. And I incur no social kickback. I'm not going to get in
I
trouble. Check. Like
yeah, I
there's
think
nothing
I
in me that says that I ought to be or I not ought not to be this really corrupt person who really wants to take advantage of people. Like I could be a
Exactly. I
CEO
see.
who's a
I see what you're
narcissist.
saying.
I could be a
Yeah.
CEO who's a narcissist and just steps on people and takes advantage of people. And then why not? You're saying that, oh, well, you wouldn't be, but like according to your own view, evolution and social construct combined, it's like that's a possibility that is totally allowable, and yet you're just assuming it won't happen. Certainly it can happen,
Right.
but like
I
the
think I get
view
what you're
has
saying.
nothing to offer to like say that I shouldn't do that if I'm a CEO who wants to take advantage of people.
So I think I get it fully, and I think I know where
Hmm.
the breakdown is. So like
Okay.
from this point, nihilism doesn't really work as a moral standing.
Hmm.
Cosmic nihilism, that we are here without reason or purpose, and using I forget what you called it, but sort of like it is up to us to it is up to us not only as individuals but as a society to give reason and purpose to ourselves. Um,
Existentialism.
right, existentialism, that's what you called it. Um, it's still very heavily based in nihilism, um,
Hmm.
but that is more as a reason for existence and not really as a moral standing. Christianity
Yeah.
addresses not only the reason for existence, God made the heavens and the earth, and formed it within 6 days, rested on the seventh. That's, why we exist, why
Yeah.
we're here, and bestowed upon us moral teachings, the Ten Commandments, the multiple rules that Catholics have to follow that we mentioned in our last conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I separate those two in my mind. Ergo, I use different philosophical reasons that aren't contradictory to address both of those in different ways. So nihilism, it can't really address moral teachings,
Yeah.
because there's not really a morality in nihilism, right? It's in fact
Well,
the lack thereof, because morality doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
But I think even being an
so
existentialist, like I said, you create these things now,
I did
and
mention existentialism, but that is not my moral
yeah.
standing.
Okay, good.
My moral standing is consequentialism.
Right.
And I'm
The
very heavy on hedonistic ideals, on deterring suffering on as many people as possible, and
mhm.
promoting, maybe not necessarily good feeling, but it's mostly in avoidance of suffering
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than in pursuit of something good. That's up to the
Okay. Yeah.
individual
I
who
totally get it.
that is for them. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's why I kind of stuttered when you mentioned like taking advantage of someone. And that's why I
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
mentioned, okay, yeah, okay, then I wouldn't want to take advantage of them, because consequentially,
Yeah.
that would cause undue suffering upon them.
That's true. Now, I think we're in agreement upon that. Like, I don't think you should take advantage of people. It's just a counterexample I was offering, of course.
Right, right.
And so I do think that
I'm
you
glad
get
we're
that
in agreement.
right. Well, I do think that you get that right. However, I don't know if you're right that nihilism is not a moral view, existentialism is not a moral view. Um, and you are mining the resources of consequentialism, aka or slash utilitarianism and hedonism, and maybe some deontology in there as well. Who care? Who knows? Sorry, who knows? Um, but those are
There
just
is a little bit of
normative.
deontology as
Yeah,
far as like, reducing the suffering as much as possible.
yeah,
I'd
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
to do a lot of introspection to see
Well,
if that's exactly deontology. But I think I'm more aligned with consequentialism, because
of
I'm
course,
talking about
yeah,
the consequence of actions rather than the actions themselves.
right. So here's what I would say, just to wrap up. So I think that so we do have agreement on that suffering is bad. I don't know that your view has the resources within it to answer why it's bad. Like that was my point. I think that um, if ultimately there's no meaning, that's your ontological or metaphysical view of nihilism. Even existentialism, it presupposes nihilism. Let's say that you want to use normative theories, that's cool, but like that doesn't answer the meta-ethical question of like what is good and why is it good. And nihilism tied into those meta-ethical questions, because if nihilism is true, those meta-ethical questions don't even get off the ground. There is no such thing as goodness. There is no such thing as value. So that's where I was like addressing like that level of dialogue. Is like meta-ethical is up here and normative is down here. The normative questions I think you have solved. That's totally fine. You continue to work those out, like the consequentialism and so on. It
Mhm.
was the meta-ethical level of, well, what is the good? Is morality even real? And your answers to those questions are just straight up no. Like ultimately, well, it could be real for you and you could work those things out, but ultimately real, it's just morals don't matter.
I
Ultimately, like you say,
that's
big picture. And so I don't
Honestly,
know,
that's a little
like,
hard to wrap my head around because like I fundamentally don't believe that there is ultimate good or ultimate morals.
yeah,
And so to ask that, to ask what is those, it's like asking like what does purple smell like, you know? It's not only an attribute that I don't believe exists for the
yeah,
thing that you've presented. I don't think that that thing exists in the first place.
yeah, and
Um
that's fine.
to believe
That's
in
that's what I sensed
to
that your
believe in this
answer.
ultimate sorry, go ahead. I
Sorry, is
interrupted
that
you.
and that no, that's fine, and that's fine because that's I sensed that your answer was that it's just not going to make sense as a question. What whether the morality is good, whether it's real, that sort of thing, like up at this meta ethical level. But I think that because of that answer you're giving at this level, it undermines the work that you're doing down here. And like to say that suffering is bad, in whatever kind of like work kind of thing I can like put together here, when you talk about a meta ethical sense of like, well, we get our morals from evolution and from social construct, like if that's where we get them, like you're I can think of like dozens of counterexamples to that, positive, false positives, false negatives, and so on, that are just not going to make it work out. Like it doesn't seem that, like I was giving you the example of the CEO who takes advantage of somebody, an narcissistic CEO, or there's going to be examples like this that like there is no reason on this view if morality is ultimately like whatever we want it to be, or it's just socially constructed, and so really there is no ultimate eternal punishment, and I don't get caught. I just get away with whatever I want. Then like you don't have the resources to like say what they're doing is actually wrong. But anyway, that
Okay.
I'm just repeating myself at this point. But do you want to give the last word, and then we'll wrap this up?
Yeah, yeah, you've given me a lot to think about, and I honestly, I wanna hop on next time
Of
to
course, yeah,
share what I ultimately come to because that is fascinating. Um, I believe I had believed that evolutionarily we were given these properties. I had mentioned um, you know, sympathy and empathy as
yeah,
ways of gauging whether or not something is socially good. And that's because evolutionarily, we wanted as a society to have as many individuals be as well propagated and as well off as possible to then propagate the species.
mhm,
When you get into fringe cases like, the
yeah,
narcissistic CEO, I think that falls apart. Not only
yeah,
because ultimately morals doesn't matter, but his personal morals wouldn't take into account the suffering and pain of others.
yeah,
Um, and I do think that that tracks with nihilism because that's what we see happen. We see
yeah,
these things happen. We see very unfortunate situations of people being taken advantage of, people being murdered for random cash in their wallet. And it's
yeah,
very unfortunate. It doesn't I don't think that it
and
takes into account suffering, and I don't think that the world itself has fundamental morals largely because of those incidences and occurrences.
yeah, yeah,
Because there's no rule book that anyone specifically plays by. Um,
yeah, yeah, and
and
so this,
what I personally attribute to, my own personal morals being about suffering is to make sure that these people are as well off as possible. I remember our last conversation, we had talked about diversity and whether or
mhm,
not there was good amounts of diversity. And when I
mhm,
talked about diversity of people, I said that it was a consequence, the outcome of having, very inclusive policies allowing people to be better off or come in
yeah,
from their horrible situations, whether that be as refugees wherever they may be, and build up a life for themselves, start again, and be able to do that with as many people as possible, with as many cultures as possible, and that diversity would be the result of that. And that made me very happy to see
Yeah.
because those people were well off. They weren't suffering in the state that they would have been if, say, their visa was rejected and they were hunted in, uh, I don't know, name some random Middle Eastern country for being gay, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
and
I think
that's
this, speaking of
You've given me a lot
the,
to think about,
yeah,
I
I,
kind of want to
well,
get to the
that's
bottom of those
great.
questions, because
Yeah.
I know what my personal morals are, but I also need to bridge that gap between,
Yeah.
the reason why we came here, my belief being this cosmic narcissism, or not narcissism, cosmic nihilism,
Yeah.
and don't quote that. It's not a Freudian slip. We hate Freud
No,
here.
that's all right. It's a good screen name.
This this cosmic nihilism and the consequentialism that I believe in, because
Hmm.
I do
Yeah.
think they match. I just need to find that match, you know?
Got you. Yeah. And that's natural to like look at like the puzzle pieces again and say, okay, can I fit these together? At the end of the day, though, I think that it's just like when you went through your Christian phase or whatever. I don't know if it was
hmm
just a phase. Like, I mean, I think it's more than a
I
phase
don't
for
think
me.
I don't think you ever stray
But
away from the Bible
but
because it's been a part of our culture. It's been a part of
yeah,
our
yeah.
lives. It has heavy hand in
But I
a
think
lot
that
of the questions that we ask. So
to com
yeah,
to complete the analogy, I think that at the end of the day, you need to look at the puzzle pieces, and if it may be that like those are just completely different puzzle sets that you're working with, or they're just never going to fit together. Um, but you raised some interesting thing about the fringe cases. This will I'll end on the fringe cases about the narcissistic CEO who takes advantage of somebody just because he can and gets away with it. That has real life application with our current events, with what's happening online. Like I mentioned earlier about watching one's language, you're not going to be able to use policy and rules, even like site-wide rules, to police all that stuff. It's a matter of character. But on the views that you're like kind of adopting here, it does seem that that's totally permissible to do as long as, hey, well, let's say a critical mass of people are um, sensitive to suffering and don't want to inflict suffering on others, but like enough to propagate this species, let's say that my biological box is ticked. So that's taken care of. But there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot. How many? I don't know. Maybe not a majority, but a lot of people who, as long as they can slide under the rules and the policies of these sites, they can say whatever the hell they want to people and drive them to do terrible things and really fan the flames of the rhetoric. And there's nothing that we can say on this view to stop them. Like, but there's
I
got
don't
to be
believe
something
that.
else. It's got to be like a matter
I,
of
I
like,
genuinely
eh,
I
well,
don't believe that. I think that
well,
you're
I would
getting caught up on the nihilism and what that means for morality, but I genuinely I don't conflate the two. And I don't
maybe,
want to put
yeah,
words in your mouth, but
yeah,
like,
maybe. I would,
you obviously you can't regulate the rules to a wide group of people, in the sense that you're talking about like on the internet, so they can say just like whatever they want to people, and yeah, that's bad. That's not I don't like
but I'm
that.
saying like when it comes,
Um,
well, I see the parallel there because it's my biological explanation is checked as far as evolutionarily speaking. I still have a critical mass of people who aren't like that, so it's just a few, and my social construction box is checked because
mhm.
policies and rules we can still have in place to eliminate the really aggressive bad behavior. But like other than that, like biology and social construct, you're still like with the narcissistic CEO, you're going to have these people fly under the radar and say terrible things to people who it just on this view it just seems permissible. Now maybe and maybe you can think of this as a
I
challenge,
don't
like
think it is,
how well,
because
maybe you can
like
think of this as a
again,
challenge, like
we're trying to
so
reduce the amount of suffering onto people. And so if they can, they mutter it under their breath and don't cause suffering onto another person, then like sure, go off, King, whatever you're gonna do. So long as you don't actively cause suffering, harm, or even discomfort or distress to people, then do what you're gonna. But if you're going to say these things directly to someone that causes distress, discomfort, um, harm, suffering, or just general anxiety, then we don't want you to do that because you are causing a consequence that someone doesn't appreciate or enjoys.
I agree with
And
you.
as such, I don't want that person within the community that we have cultivated online on this page. And from this ideology, we can kick you out. We should kick you out so that you
Yeah.
don't cause further suffering. Maybe keep you a little bit roped in case, like, you get better and you want to get invited back in and you genuinely have shown this effort to be better. But yeah,
Let me ask you this. So, and I do really need to get off here. So, like,
yeah, I'm
I would
sorry. I'm
challenge
totally
you.
holding you
That's
up.
all right.
I'm sorry.
So I would challenge you, and maybe you can think about this and come back and report next time. But like, is there a place on your view for virtue and character in a person? Because I think
I'm
that's what it boils
writing
down to. Like,
writing
like
this
these
down.
person, yeah, these individual persons have um no skin in the game when it comes to like they can slide under the rules as long as they're not breaking anything, um if they can get away with it. But like, is there any space for character on the moral theory and framework that you're working with, where it would be not just about, oh, let's not spread suffering and so on, but like maybe you can like work that in with respect to like, well, it's actually we can frame it in the sense of like we need to cultivate compassion in individual people and like have them be individually responsible for their own character and their own growth and their own virtues. So yeah, it's just another, and that would be a completely different ethical theory. And then um, yeah, and then you can read up on virtue ethics. Like, I'm sure there's some crash course places around the internet that you can find more about it. But yeah,
I'll look into what it means to have a character and how this philosophy
yeah, Aristotle's a great
can.
place to start.
Aristotle, you say? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll look at. I'm writing that down.
good deal.
Aristotle. How do you spell his name again?
Aristotle.
Okay, so how it sounds.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I look forward to talking with you next time.
Yeah, me too. This has been great. I'm glad that we could have this conversation.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
yeah, I have that saved as a text document.
Awesome. All right.
Um,
Well, till next time.
you got a talkative viewer right here at the end. Mr. Big
Yeah.
Murph, you're gonna have to come in next time.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can have a conversation. He's got slide under what rules, like thought crimes, lust. That's yeah, that's a conversation that you can have with Mr. Alistair. McAllister. I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
replacing the Mick somewhere in the middle.
And
Yeah,
I'll be on
great
live
having you.
tomorrow. We'll have another philosophy office hours tomorrow. So,
Tomorrow?
yep.
You spoil me.
I know, back-to-back days. All right. Well, I will see you next time. Take care.
Goodbye.
All right. Bye. All right, guys. That is it for us today. Um, It is 9:15 my time, so I'm heading to bed. I need to wind down and so on. But I will be on live tomorrow. This was kind of a one-off treat, given the circumstances, given the topic, and current events and so on. So I wanted to talk about some of the themes that were involved. We discussed themes of forgiveness, even touched upon some things like Second Amendment stuff, some things there at the end with respect to biblical values and whether they can really be biblical values. Then we got into like meta ethics and worldviews with respect to like nihilism and existentialism and so on. So we hit upon a bunch of things, and that's normally what we do on these live call-ins, because every caller has something that's itching to them that they really want to talk about, and I really appreciate it. So if you want to join us next time, the time tomorrow going to be around the same time. I usually like to hold it a little bit early, like 4:30 to 6:30 is a bit late for me, but I did, I did teach 3 classes today and then got out and then suddenly jumped on a live after dinner, after a quick dinner. So this is not my normal time, but maybe it can be. But I hope to see you again then, and if you want, then we can answer some of these questions that Big Murph seems to have on the chat. So, Big Murph, if you are there, and as long as you're not trolling, I encourage you, Big Murph, whatever your real name is, from 1971, nice birth date there. I encourage you to read the description of my call-in videos. Not this one because I didn't copy everything, but if you go to one of my office hours, I encourage friendly and productive discussion. I don't debate things, and I'm not hostile or aggressive, as you saw with my last guest here. And I think that a big difference between me and these other creators is that yeah, that stuff gets clicks and it's really hot and juicy and fun and oh man, we can glom onto that because it's oh man, it's like foaming at the mouth with that sort of that aggressive behavior and owning people and dog walking people and so on. I'm just not interested in any of that because I'm really interested in the truth. I'm interested in getting to the truth, and I'm interested in doing that collaboratively. I don't care about, hey, prove me wrong. I don't care about, um, I'm going to own you, and then you make you look like a fool. I'm interested in collaboratively, collectively walking together towards the truth together. We do it as a project together, and so you come on and we talk about whatever topic you want to talk about. And as long as you're civil about it, I have no reason to kick you out. So. Until next time, guys, I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow. All right. Everybody take care. Bye-bye.